Hey, you made it. I'm so happy you're here, all cozy and ready to listen. Picture this, you're snuggled under your blanket, maybe with one leg sticking out because you're just a little wild like that. I love that about you. Welcome to this calm, sleepy story time. Before we dive in, I want to know something fun. Where are you listening from right now? Is it your bedroom, a car, or maybe somewhere super cool? And what time is it where you are? Are you up late, or is it early in the morning? I always read your answers when I'm up way too late, like a sleepy raccoon with big, tired eyes. Tonight, we're going to talk about something super relaxing. Boring history for sleep, why medieval bakers slept late for the best sleep in history. So let's get comfy and start this gentle journey back in time. Okay, let's imagine a world long, long ago. A time when there were no phones, no computers, no bright screens flashing at night. This was the medieval time, hundreds of years ago, when people lived in small villages with houses made of wood and straw. The air smelled like fresh bread, campfires, and maybe a little bit of farm animals. In this world, bakers were super important because they made bread for everyone. Bread was like the king of food back then. Everybody ate it every single day. But bakers had a funny life. They worked super late and they slept super late too. Why? Because their job was all about making sure the bread was ready when the village woke up. And let me tell you, their sleep was some of the best sleep in history. Want to know why? Let's find out together, nice and slow, so you can feel sleepy and cozy. First, let's talk about what it was like to be a baker back then. Imagine waking up when it's still dark outside with stars twinkling in the sky. The village is quiet, except for maybe a rooster crowing or a dog barking softly. Bakers had to get up way before everyone else because bread takes a long time to make. They didn't have machines like we do now. Nope, they mixed flour and water with their hands, kneaded the dough until it was soft, and then waited for it to rise. That's when the dough gets all puffy, like a fluffy pillow. Then they shaped it into loaves and baked it in a big oven made of stone or clay. The oven was heated with a fire, so they had to chop wood and keep the fire going just right. It was hard work, but it made the whole village smell amazing, like warm, toasty bread. Now, because bakers worked so late, they didn't go to bed when everyone else did. Most people in the village went to sleep when the sun went down, but bakers, they were still up mixing dough or watching the fire. Sometimes they worked until the middle of the night. By the time they finished, they were so tired, their eyes felt heavy and their bodies just wanted to rest. And when they finally got to sleep, oh, it was the best. Their beds weren't fancy like ours. No soft mattresses or fluffy pillows. They slept on straw mattresses, which were like big sacks filled with dry grass. It sounds scratchy, but it was cozy in its own way, especially when they wrapped themselves in a wool blanket. Let's think about why their sleep was so good. First, they were super tired from all that work. Kneading dough is like giving your arms a big workout. Carrying wood and lifting heavy trays of bread made their bodies ready for rest. When you work hard like that, your body just knows it's time to sleep. It's like when you run around all day at the park and then feel so sleepy at night. That's how bakers felt every single day. Their bodies were tired, but in a good way, like they'd earned their sleep. Another reason their sleep was great was because their world was quiet. There were no cars zooming by, no TVs blaring, no phones dinging with messages. At night, the village was dark and still. The only sounds were soft ones, like the wind blowing through the trees or maybe a cow mooing in the distance. Sometimes the bakers could hear the fire crackling in the oven or their little dog snoring next to them. Those sounds were like a lullaby, helping them drift off to sleep. Imagine lying in bed, hearing only the soft whoosh of the wind or the gentle creak of the house. It's so calming, right? Bakers also had a special way of sleeping called segmented sleep. That means they didn't sleep all at once like we try to do now. Instead, they slept in two parts. They'd go to bed early in the evening, sleep for a few hours, then wake up in the middle of the night. They might sit up, talk quietly, or just lie there, thinking about their day. Then they'd go back to sleep for a few more hours until morning. This might sound strange, but it worked for them. It was like their bodies knew how to rest in little chunks, and it made them feel refreshed. Let's talk about their beds some more. Like I said, they slept on straw mattresses. These were big bags stuffed with straw, and they'd put them on a wooden frame or even just the floor. The straw was a little crunchy, but it was warm and soft enough. They'd cover it with a sheet made of rough cloth and then pile on blankets made of wool. Wool is nice because it keeps you warm, even if it's a little scratchy. Sometimes, bakers shared their beds with their family. Maybe their kids or even their dog slept right next to them, all snuggled up. It was crowded, but it felt safe and cozy, like being wrapped in a big hug. The bakers' houses were small, usually just 1 or 2 rooms. The bakery was often part of the house, so the air always smelled like bread, even at night. Imagine falling asleep with the faint smell of warm bread all around you. It's like the best kind of dream. The house was made of wood and mud with a roof of straw or tiles. It wasn't fancy, but it kept out the rain and wind. At night, they'd close the wooden shutters over the windows to keep the cold out, and the room would get nice and dark. That darkness was like a signal to their brains, time to sleep. Now let's think about what bakers did before bed. After a long day of baking, they'd eat a simple meal. Maybe it was a bowl of pottage, which is like a thick soup made of grains, vegetables, and maybe a bit of meat if they were lucky. It was warm and filled their bellies, making them feel sleepy. They'd sit by the fire, eating slowly, talking quietly with their family. The fire would be low, just a few glowing embers giving off a soft, warm light. That light made everything feel calm and peaceful. After eating, they had little bedtime rituals. They'd fold their clothes, check the fire to make sure it wouldn't go out, and maybe say a quiet prayer. These were simple things, but they were like a signal to their bodies. The day is done, it's time to rest. Then they'd climb into bed, pull the blankets up, and let out a big happy sigh. The world outside was quiet, the stars were shining, and sleep came easily. Bakers didn't worry about sleep the way we do now. Today we have clocks and schedules, and we stress about getting enough hours of sleep. But back then, bakers just slept when they were tired. They didn't need to count hours or set alarms. Their bodies knew when to rest, and the dark, quiet night helped them. Even if they had a bad day, maybe the bread burned or the fire wouldn't stay lit, they still slept. They knew tomorrow was a new day, and sleep was their friend. Sometimes, bakers dreamed about their work. They might dream of perfect, golden loaves of bread, or maybe a funny dream about a cow eating their dough. They believed dreams had meanings, like a message from their heart or even from the stars. A dream about bread rising might mean good things were coming. A dream about rain might mean they needed to be careful, but they didn't worry too much about it. They just let their dreams float by like clouds in the sky. Even though life was hard, bakers found joy in small things. The smell of fresh bread, the warmth of the fire, the sound of their family breathing softly next to them. These things made their nights special. They didn't have much, but they had enough. And when they slept deeply, their bodies tired from honest work, their minds calm from a simple life. Let's think about what made their sleep so good compared to ours. Today we have so many things that keep us awake. Bright lights, loud noises, and screens that glow all night. We worry about school work or what's happening online, but bakers didn't have any of that. Their world was small and quiet. They worked hard, ate simple food, and let the night take care of them. The darkness was like a soft blanket, wrapping them up and saying, it's okay to rest now. Sometimes bakers had funny nights. Maybe their dog snored so loud it woke them up and they'd laugh quietly in the dark, or maybe their husband or wife rolled over and took all the blankets. They'd giggle, tug the blanket back, and fall back asleep. Life wasn't perfect, but it was okay. They didn't need everything to be just right to sleep well. They just needed a quiet night and a tired body. Bakers also felt needed. Their bread fed the whole village. Kids, parents, even the grumpy old man down the road, they all loved the baker's bread. Knowing they were helping others gave bakers a warm feeling inside. It made their sleep even sweeter, like they'd done something good that day. The rhythm of their days helped too. Every day was the same. Wake up, make dough, bake bread, eat, sleep. That sameness was like a song, lulling them to sleep each night. They didn't have to wonder what tomorrow would bring. They knew it would be more bread, more fire, more quiet nights, and that made sleep come easily. Even on hard days, bakers slept. Maybe the dough didn't rise or the rain leaked through the roof, but they didn't let those things steal their rest. They'd curl up in their straw bed, listen to the soft sounds of the night, and let sleep take them away. They knew that no matter what, tomorrow would come and they'd try again. The night was their friend. It wasn't scary or lonely. It was soft and kind, holding them close until morning. The stars outside, the fire inside, the gentle snores of their family, it all worked together to make sleep feel safe and warm. Bakers didn't fight sleep. They welcomed it like an old friend coming to visit. So as you lie there, cozy under your blanket, think about those bakers. Their lives were simple, their beds were plain, but their sleep was deep and peaceful. They didn't need fancy things to rest well. They just needed a tired body, a quiet night, and a heart that knew tomorrow was another day. Maybe we can learn from them. Maybe tonight you can let the darkness be your friend too. Close your eyes, listen to the quiet, and let sleep come softly just like it did for the bakers long ago. Good night, my friend. Sleep well. Imagine a tiny village in medieval England, a long, long time ago. This was a place where life was so different from today. There were no cars, no phones, no computers, and no bright lights flashing at night. The air smelled like wood smoke, like when you have a campfire, and there was always the warm, cozy smell of fresh bread floating around. That's because bakers were super important in the village. They made bread for everyone, and bread was the most popular food, kind of like pizza is today. People ate it every single day. Let's take a slow, sleepy trip into their world, okay? Close your eyes and picture it nice and easy. In this village, the houses were small and made of wood and mud. Some had roofs made of straw, like a big pile of dry grass, and others had tiles. The streets weren't paved like ours, they were just dirt paths, sometimes muddy when it rained. When you walked outside, you might hear a cow mooing or a sheep baaing in the distance. There were no loud noises like cars or sirens. Instead, the village was quiet, especially at night. The only sounds were soft ones, like the wind blowing through the trees or the gentle creak of a wooden door. It was a calm, peaceful place, perfect for feeling sleepy. Bakers were special people in this village. They didn't have a normal schedule like most folks. While everyone else was getting ready for bed when the sun went down, bakers were just starting their work. They had to wake up super early, way before the sun came up, when the stars were still shining in the sky. Why? Because making bread took a long time and they wanted it to be ready for the village in the morning. Bread was a big deal back then. It wasn't just something you ate, it was what kept everyone full and happy. Let's think about what a baker's day was like. First, they had to mix flour and water to make dough. They didn't have fancy machines like we do now, so they used their hands. They'd push and pull the dough, kneading it until it was soft and stretchy like a squishy ball. This was hard work, and it made their arms tired. Then they had to wait for the dough to rise. That's when the dough gets puffy, kind of like a balloon slowly filling with air. It could take hours. After that, they shaped the dough into loaves, big round ones or long, skinny ones, and put them in a big oven made of stone or clay. The oven was heated by a fire, so they also had to chop wood and keep the fire burning just right. Too hot and the bread would burn, too cold and it wouldn't cook. It was a lot of work, but when the bread came out all golden and crusty, it made the whole village smell like heaven. Because bakers worked so late, they didn't go to bed when everyone else did. Most people in the village went to sleep as soon as it got dark. Back then there were no electric lights, so when the sun went down, the world got dark and quiet. People lit candles or small oil lamps, but those didn't give much light, so most folks just went to bed. But bakers, they were still up, mixing dough, tending the fire, or pulling hot loaves out of the oven. Sometimes they worked until the middle of the night. By the time they were done, they were so tired, their eyes felt heavy and their bodies just wanted to rest. And when they finally got to sleep, oh, it was the best kind of sleep. Deep, cozy, and peaceful. Let's talk about what made their world so different from ours. Today we have so many things that keep us busy. We have TVs, video games, and phones that light up with messages all the time. At night, our houses are bright with electric lights and we can stay up as late as we want. But in medieval times, there was none of that. When it got dark, the world slowed down. There were no screens to stare at, no notifications to check. The village was quiet and the darkness was like a big, soft blanket that told everyone it was time to rest. For bakers, this was extra special because they worked so hard. When they finally got to bed, it felt like a reward, like sinking into a warm, cozy hug. The village itself was a sleepy place. Imagine walking through it at night. The houses were small, with tiny windows covered by wooden shutters. Inside, families were curled up together, maybe on straw mattresses or simple wooden beds. The air was cool and the only light came from the stars or the moon. If you listen closely, you might hear an owl hooting or the soft rustle of leaves. It was so peaceful, like the whole world was taking a deep breath and saying, time to sleep. Bakers loved this quiet time. After a long day of work, they could finally relax and let the night take care of them. Bakers didn't live fancy lives. Their houses were simple, with dirt floors and walls made of mud and sticks. They didn't have soft carpets or big, comfy beds like we do, but they didn't need those things to be happy. Their lives were all about the rhythm of their work, mixing dough, waiting for it to rise, baking it, and then starting all over again the next day. That rhythm was like a song, slow and steady, that helped them feel calm. It was like their days and nights had a special beat, and sleep was the quiet part of the song. Another thing that made their lives different was how close everyone was. In the village, people knew each other. The baker knew the farmer who grew the wheat, the miller who ground it into flour, and the kids who came running for a warm piece of bread. Everyone worked together, and that made the village feel like a big family. Bakers were proud of their work because they knew their bread helped feed everyone. It wasn't just about making food, it was about taking care of the people they loved. That feeling made their sleep even better, knowing they'd done something good. The weather was a big part of life back then, too. In the summer, the days were long and warm, and the bakers' ovens made their houses hot. In the winter, it was cold, and they had to bundle up in wool blankets to stay warm. Sometimes rain would leak through the straw roof, and they'd have to put a bucket under the drip. But even with those challenges, bakers found ways to be cozy. They'd build a fire in the oven not just for baking, but to warm the house. The glow of the fire made everything feel safe and snug, like a little bubble of warmth in the cold night. Let's think about what it was like to be a baker's family. If you were a baker's kid, you might help out in the bakery. Maybe you carried wood or swept the floor. It was hard work, but it was fun too because you got to be with your family. At night, the whole family would sleep close together, maybe in one big bed or on mattresses laid out on the floor. They didn't have separate bedrooms like we do now. Everyone shared the space, and that made it feel warm and safe. Sometimes the family dog or cat would curl up with them, adding to the coziness. Imagine falling asleep with your little brother snoring next to you and a cat purring at your feet. It's hard not to feel sleepy just thinking about it. The baker's world was full of simple things. They didn't have a lot of stuff like toys or gadgets, but they had what they needed. A table to eat at, a fire to keep warm, and a bed to sleep in. Their clothes were plain, made of wool or linen, and they wore the same things every day. They didn't have closets full of clothes like we do, but that was okay because life wasn't about having lots of things. It was about working together, sharing meals, and resting when the day was done. Food was simple too. Besides bread, bakers ate things like pottage, which was a thick soup made of grains, vegetables, and sometimes a bit of meat. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and filling. They'd eat it with a wooden spoon, sitting by the fire, talking about their day. After eating, they'd clean up and get ready for bed. There were no long bedtime routines like brushing your teeth with electric toothbrushes or taking a hot shower. They'd just wash their hands and face with cold water from a bucket, maybe say a little prayer, and climb into bed. The best part about being a baker was how their work made them feel. When they finished baking for the day, they knew they'd done something important. The whole village depended on their bread. Kids would run to the bakery in the morning, excited for a warm loaf. Old people would smile and say thank you. That feeling of being needed made bakers happy, and it helped them sleep better. They didn't lie awake worrying about things like we do sometimes. They just closed their eyes and let sleep come, knowing they'd done their best. The village was a place where everyone had a job. The farmer grew the wheat, the miller ground it into flour, and the baker turned it into bread. Everyone worked together like pieces of a puzzle. There were no big stores or factories. If you needed something, you made it or got it from someone in the village. That made life feel connected, like everyone was part of the same big story. For bakers, their part of the story was making bread, and they loved it, even if it meant staying up late. At night, the village was so dark. There were no streetlights or glowing signs. The only light came from the moon and stars, or maybe a candle if someone was still awake. That darkness was special. It made the world feel quiet and still, like it was time to rest. Bakers loved this time of night. After a long day of work, they could finally relax. They'd close the shutters, bank the fire, that means covering it with ashes so it would stay warm until morning, and get into bed. The darkness was like a friend, telling them it was okay to sleep. Sometimes, bakers would look up at the stars before bed. If they stepped outside, they could see a sky full of twinkling lights. There were no city lights to make the stars hard to see, so the sky was bright with them. It was like a big, beautiful blanket over the world. Looking at the stars made bakers feel small but also safe, like the world was watching over them. Then they'd go inside, lie down, and let the night take them away. Sleep was a big part of life back then. People didn't think about it the way we do now. Today, we worry about getting 8 hours of sleep or staying up too late. But in medieval times, sleep was just something you did when you were tired. Bakers didn't have clocks to tell them when to go to bed. They listened to their bodies. When their eyes got heavy and their yawns got big, they knew it was time to rest. And because they worked so hard, their bodies were ready for sleep every night. The bakers' lives were tied to the seasons too. In the spring, they might bake bread with fresh herbs from the garden. In the winter, they'd make hearty loaves to keep everyone warm and full. The world around them changed with the seasons, and their work changed a little too. But one thing stayed the same: at the end of the day, they got to rest. No matter how cold or rainy it was, they had their cozy bed and their warm blankets to make everything okay. Let's imagine a baker's night. After they finished baking, they'd sit by the fire for a bit. The fire would be low, just a few glowing embers giving off a soft, warm light. They might eat a bowl of pottage or nibble on a piece of bread they saved from the day. They'd talk quietly with their family, maybe laugh about something funny that happened, like a chicken wandering into the bakery. Then they'd get ready for bed. They'd fold their apron, check the fire one last time, and maybe say a little prayer for a good day tomorrow. Then they'd climb into bed, pull the blankets up, and let out a big sigh. The world was quiet, the house was warm, and sleep was waiting. Sometimes bakers had funny nights. Maybe a mouse ran across the floor or the wind made the shutters rattle. They'd laugh and go back to sleep. Life wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. They had their work, their family, and their cozy bed. That was enough to make sleep come easily. Even if the straw mattress was a little lumpy or the room was a little cold, they didn't mind. They were too tired to care, and that tiredness was like a magic spell that made them sleep deeply. The bakers' world was slow and simple. They didn't rush around like we do. They didn't have a million things to do or places to be. Their days were about making bread, caring for their family, and resting when the work was done. That slowness made their sleep so good. They didn't lie awake thinking about tomorrow's to-do list. They just closed their eyes and let the night take over. The quiet village, the dark sky, and the soft sounds all worked together to make sleep feel like a warm, safe place. So as you listen to this, think about that little village. Picture the bakers working hard all day, then sinking into their straw beds at night. Imagine the smell of bread in the air, the glow of the fire, and the quiet of the night. Their lives were so different from ours, but they knew how to rest. They let the darkness be their friend, and they slept deeply, knowing they'd done their best. Maybe we can learn from them. Maybe tonight, you can let the quiet wrap around you like a blanket and drift off to sleep, just like the bakers did long ago. Let's meet Beatrice, a kind woman who lived in a small village in medieval England, a long, long time ago. Beatrice was the baker's wife, and she was special because she helped make bread for everyone in the village. Bread was super important back then, like the best snack ever. Imagine her hands always dusted with white flour like she'd been playing in a pile of soft snow. She had a sleepy smile, the kind that makes you feel warm and cozy, like when you're tucked into bed with your favorite blanket. Beatrice was sweet and gentle, and she loved giving little bits of warm, crusty bread to the village kids when they ran by the bakery. Her eyes would get droopy by the middle of the day, and she'd yawn big yawns while she pushed and pulled the dough to make it soft. Beatrice loved her work, but oh, she loved her sleep even more. Let's learn all about Beatrice and her simple, happy life so you can feel calm and sleepy too. Beatrice lived in a little house right next to the bakery. The house was small, with walls made of mud and sticks and a roof made of straw. It wasn't fancy like houses today with big TVs or soft couches, but it was cozy and it smelled like fresh bread all the time. Beatrice shared the house with her husband, Thomas, who was the baker. They worked together every day making bread for the whole village. Beatrice was always busy, but she never seemed rushed. She moved slowly like she was dancing with the dough, and her smile made everyone feel happy. Beatrice was the kind of person who made you feel good just by being around her. She had a round face with rosy cheeks, probably from standing near the hot oven all day. Her hair was brown and a little messy, tucked under a cloth cap to keep it out of the way. She She wore a simple dress made of rough cloth with an apron tied around her waist. The apron was always covered in flour, like a badge that showed she was a hard worker. When she laughed, it was soft and quiet, like a little bell ringing. The village kids loved her because she was so kind. If a kid came to the bakery with big, hungry eyes, Beatrice would sneak them a small piece of bread, still warm from the oven. She'd wink and say, "Don't tell anyone," and the kids would giggle and run off, munching happily. Beatrice's day started early, way before the sun came up. While the village was still dark and quiet, she'd get out of bed, her feet touching the cold dirt floor. She'd shiver a little and pull her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Then she'd light a candle, and its tiny flame would make the room feel warm and safe. She and Thomas would head to the bakery, which was just a few steps away in the same house. The bakery had a big stone oven, and it was Beatrice's job to help get it ready. She'd carry wood to keep the fire going, and she'd mix flour and water to make dough. Her hands were strong from all the kneading, but they were gentle too, like she was petting a soft kitten. Kneading dough was Beatrice's favorite part of the day. She'd push the dough with her hands, fold it over, and push again over and over. It was hard work, and it made her arms tired, but it was also kind of fun. The dough felt soft and squishy, and it smelled clean like the earth after rain. Sometimes she'd hum a little song while she worked, a quiet tune that made the bakery feel even cozier. By the time the sun started to rise, Beatrice's eyes were already getting heavy. She'd yawn big and loud, and Thomas would laugh and say, "Beatrice, you sound like a sleepy bear." She'd smile and keep working, but oh, how she looked forward to sleep. Beatrice wasn't just kind to the kids. She was kind to everyone. If an old woman came to the bakery and didn't have enough money, Beatrice would give her a loaf anyway and say, "Pay me next time." She knew the village needed bread, and she wanted everyone to have some. The other villagers loved her for it. They'd say Beatrice's bread is the best, and they weren't just talking about the taste. They meant her kindness made it special. When Beatrice handed you a loaf, it was like she was giving you a little piece of her heart. Even though Beatrice worked hard, she always found time to notice the little things. She loved the way the morning light came through the bakery's tiny window, making the flour dust sparkle in the air. She loved the sound of birds chirping outside as the village woke up. Sometimes a little sparrow would hop into the bakery looking for crumbs, and Beatrice would laugh and shoo it away gently. She'd say, "Go on, little bird, this bread is for people." Her life was full of these small, happy moments, and they made her days feel warm and bright, even when she was tired. By midday, Beatrice was so sleepy she could hardly keep her eyes open. The bakery was hot from the oven, and the air was thick with the smell of baking bread. Her hands were covered in flour, and her apron was a mess. She'd sit down for a moment just to catch her breath, and her head would start to nod. Sometimes she'd close her eyes for a quick nap, just a few minutes, leaning against the wall. Thomas would see her and smile, knowing how hard she worked. He'd let her rest because he knew how much she loved her sleep. Sleep was Beatrice's favorite thing in the world, even more than baking bread. After a long day, when the last loaf was baked and the fire was low, she'd clean up the bakery and get ready for bed. She'd wash her hands in a bucket of cold water, shaking off the flour. Then she'd untie her apron and fold it neatly, setting it on a stool for the next day. She'd check the fire one last time, making sure it wouldn't go out completely. Then she'd climb into bed, a simple mattress stuffed with straw. It wasn't soft like a modern bed, but it was cozy, especially when she pulled a wool blanket over her. Beatrice's bed was in the corner of the house, right near the bakery. It was just a wooden frame with a big sack of straw on top, covered with a rough cloth sheet. The straw crunched a little when she lay down, but she didn't mind. It was warm and smelled like the fields where the wheat grew. She'd snuggle under her blanket, and sometimes her little dog Pip would curl up next to her. Pip was a small, scruffy dog with big eyes, and he loved Beatrice. He'd snore softly, and that sound was like a lullaby to her. Sometimes, Thomas would already be in bed, and they'd talk quietly about their day before drifting off. It was a simple life, but it was full of love. Beatrice's kindness wasn't just for people. She loved animals too. Besides Pip, there was a gray cat named Muffin who lived in the bakery. Muffin would sleep on a shelf near the oven where it was warm, and sometimes she'd stretch out and knock over a spoon or a bowl. Beatrice would laugh and say, "Oh, Muffin, you're such a silly cat." She'd give Muffin a tiny piece of bread crust, and the cat would purr so loud it filled the room. Beatrice loved these little moments with her animals. They made her feel happy, like her heart was full. The village kids were always around the bakery, hopping for a treat. Beatrice knew all their names, little Emma with her pigtails, Tommy with his muddy knees, and Sarah who was always singing. She'd see them playing outside and call them over. "Come here, you little rascals," she'd say, and she'd break off a piece of bread for each of them. Their eyes would light up, and they'd say, "Thank you, Beatrice," before running off to play. Those moments made Beatrice's day even better. She loved seeing the kids happy, and it made her work feel important. Beatrice's life wasn't always easy. Sometimes the flour ran low, and they had to wait for the miller to grind more. Sometimes the oven got too hot and the bread burned. But Beatrice didn't let those things make her sad. She'd shrug and say, "Tomorrow will be better." And it usually was. She had a way of finding the good in every day, even the hard ones. That's what made her so special. She wasn't just a baker's wife. She was a friend to everyone in the village. When Beatrice wasn't working, she liked to sit outside for a bit, especially in the evening. She'd look at the sky, watching the stars come out one by one. The village was so dark at night, with no bright lights to hide the stars. They twinkled like tiny candles in the sky, and Beatrice would smile, feeling like the world was a big, beautiful place. Sometimes she'd see a shooting star and make a wish. She'd wish for simple things, like good wheat for the bread or a warm winter. Then she'd go inside, ready for bed, her heart feeling light. Beatrice's days were long, but they had a rhythm, like a song that never changed. Wake up early, mix the dough, knead it, wait for it to rise, bake the bread, clean up, and sleep. Every day was the same, and that sameness was comforting. It was like knowing exactly what would happen next, so she didn't have to worry. That rhythm helped her sleep so well. When she lay down at night, her body knew it was time to rest, and her mind was quiet. No worries, no stress, just the soft feeling of being done for the day. Sometimes, Beatrice would dream about her work. She might dream of baking the perfect loaf, all golden and crusty, or maybe a funny dream where the dough grew so big it filled the whole bakery. She'd wake up laughing, and Thomas would grumble, "What's so funny?" She'd tell him about her dream, and they'd both giggle before going back to sleep. Beatrice believed dreams were special, like little messages from her heart. A dream about bread might mean a good day was coming. A dream about rain might mean she needed to be careful. But she didn't worry about her dreams. She just let them come and go, like clouds in the sky. Beatrice's life was full of small joys. The smell of fresh bread, the sound of Pip snoring, the smiles of the village kids. These things made her happy, even when she was tired. She didn't need a lot to feel good. Her little house, her family, her work, that was enough. And when she went to bed at night, she felt safe and cozy. The straw mattress, the wool blanket, the soft sounds of the village, they all worked together to make her sleep deep and peaceful. Sometimes Beatrice had hard days. Maybe the fire wouldn't light or the dough didn't rise right, but she didn't let those days steal her sleep. She'd still climb into bed, pull the blanket up, and let out a big sigh. The world outside was quiet and the darkness was kind. She knew tomorrow was a new day and she'd try again. That's what made Beatrice so strong. She didn't give up, and she always found a way to rest. Beatrice's kindness spread through the village like the smell of her bread. Everyone knew her and everyone loved her. The old man who lived down the road would stop by and say, "Beatrice, your bread makes my day better." The young mothers would bring their bobbies to the bakery, and Beatrice would coo at them, making them smile. Even the grumpy miller, who didn't like anyone, would soften when Beatrice handed him a loaf. She had a way of making people feel cared for, and that made her sleep even sweeter, knowing she'd made a difference. At night, when the bakery was quiet, Beatrice would sit by the fire for a bit. The flames were low, just a soft glow, and the room was warm. She'd eat a bowl of pottage, a thick soup made of barley and vegetables, and maybe a piece of her own bread. She'd talk to Thomas about their day, laughing about little things like how Pip chased a mouse and tripped over a broom. Those moments were simple, but they were everything to Beatrice. They made her feel like her life was full, even if it was just a small life in a small village. When it was time for bed, Beatrice had a little routine. She'd wash her face with cold water, shake the flour off her hands, and fold her apron. She'd check the fire, making sure it was safe for the night. Then she'd say a quiet prayer, asking for a good day tomorrow. She'd climb into bed, the straw crunching under her, and pull the blanket up to her chin. Pip would snuggle close, and sometimes Muffin the cat would jump up too, curling into a ball at her feet. Beatrice would smile, close her eyes, and let sleep come. It always did, soft and gentle, like a warm hug from the night. Beatrice's sleep was the best because her life was simple. She didn't have a million things to worry about like we do today. No phones buzzing, no emails to answer, no homework piling up. Her world was small, the bakery, her family, the village, but it was enough. Her work made her tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that makes sleep feel like a reward. Her heart was full of love, and her mind was calm. When she closed her eyes, she didn't think about tomorrow's problems. She just thought about how good it felt to rest. Sometimes Beatrice would wake up in the middle of the night. Back then, people didn't always sleep all at once. They sleep for a few hours, wake up for a bit, then sleep again. Beatrice might sit up, look at the stars through a crack in the shutter, or listen to the soft sounds of the village. Maybe she'd whisper to Thomas about something funny, like how Muffin tried to steal a piece of dough. Then they'd both drift back to sleep, cozy and content. That kind of sleep in little chunks felt natural to Beatrice. It was like her body knew how to rest, and she let it. Beatrice's life teaches us something important. You don't need a fancy bed or a big house to sleep well. You don't need everything to be perfect. Beatrice's life was simple, but it was full of love and purpose. She worked hard, she cared for others, and she let herself rest when the day was done. Her sleepy smile, her flour-dusted hands, her kind heart, they all made her special. And when she went to bed at night, she slept like she deserved it, because she did. So as you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine her in her cozy little house, snuggled up with Pip and Muffin, dreaming of bread and stars. Let her story make you feel calm and sleepy, ready to drift off just like she did. Beatrice's day started super early when it was still dark outside and the stars were twinkling in the sky like tiny, shiny lights. The whole village was quiet, fast asleep, with only the soft sounds of an owl hooting or the wind whispering through the trees. Beatrice would wake up in her little house, where she lived with her husband, Thomas, and their scruffy dog, Pip. She'd wiggle out from under her warm wool blanket, her feet touching the cold, hard dirt floor. It was chilly, and she'd shiver a little as she stood up. The bakery, which was part of their house, was waiting for her. The big stone oven needed to be lit, and the dough needed her care to turn into yummy bread for the village. Beatrice moved slowly like she was still half asleep, but her hands knew exactly what to do. They were so used to the work, it was like they could do it with her eyes closed. Sometimes she'd drop a little bit of dough by mistake, and a sleepy giggle would slip out. Mornings were soft and quiet like that, gentle and calm, perfect for making you feel cozy and ready to drift into her world. The house was dark when Beatrice woke up. There were no electric lights back then, so she'd light a candle. The candle's tiny flame made a soft, warm glow like a little hug from the light. It wasn't bright like a lamp, but it was enough to see her way to the bakery. The bakery was just a few steps from her bed in the same small house. The walls were made of mud and sticks, and the floor was packed dirt, smooth from years of walking on it. The air smelled like flour and wood smoke, and it was a little chilly before the oven got going. Beatrice would wrap her shawl around her shoulders to stay warm, her feet bare because shoes were for outside. She didn't mind the cold floor too much. It woke her up just enough to start her day. First, Beatrice had to get the oven ready. The oven was big, made of heavy stones, and it sat in the corner of the bakery. It wasn't like ovens we have today with buttons and timers. This oven needed a fire to heat it up, and that meant work. Beatrice would grab some sticks and logs from a pile near the door. She'd carry them to the oven, her arms full, and carefully stack them inside. Then she'd use a flint, a special stone, to make a spark. She'd strike it against another stone, and a tiny spark would jump out. She'd blow gently on some dry grass to catch the spark, and soon a little flame would start. Beatrice was good at this. She'd done it a million times. The fire would grow, crackling and popping, and the oven would start to get warm. The smell of burning wood mixed with the flour in the air, and it made the bakery feel alive. While the fire was getting going, Beatrice would start on the dough. She kept a big wooden bowl on a table, and she'd pour in flour from a sack. The flour was soft and powdery, and it would puff up in little clouds when she poured it. Sometimes it got on her nose, and she'd laugh because she looked like a ghost. She'd add water from a bucket and a pinch of salt, then mix it all with her hands. Her fingers would squish into the dough, pushing and turning it until it was smooth. This was called kneading, and it was hard work. Her arms would get tired and her hands would feel sticky, but she liked it. The dough felt alive, like it was growing under her fingers. She'd hum a little song, soft and slow, to keep herself company. The song was one her mom taught her about the sun and the fields, and it made the morning feel even softer. Sometimes Beatrice would drop a bit of dough on the floor by accident. It would fall with a little plop, and she'd giggle, her sleepy chuckle filling the quiet bakery. "Oh, Beatrice," she'd say to herself, "you're not awake yet." She'd pick up the dough and toss it into a bucket for the pigs. They loved eating scraps. Mornings were full of little mistakes like that, but Beatrice didn't mind. They made her smile, and they made the day feel gentle, like nothing was too serious yet. The bakery was her happy place, even when she was sleepy and yawning. Once the dough was mixed, Beatrice had to let it sit for a while. This was called letting the dough rise. The dough needed time to get puffy like a big, soft pillow. Beatrice would cover the bowl with a cloth and set it near the oven where it was warm. The warmth helped the dough grow, and it would take a few hours. While she waited, she'd do other jobs. She'd sweep the floor with a broom made of twigs, brushing away bits of flour and crumbs. She'd check the fire, adding more wood if it was getting low. The fire had to be just right, not too hot, or the bread would burn, and not too cold, or it wouldn't bake. Beatrice knew how to tell by looking at the flames. If they were orange and dancing, it was perfect. By now, the sky outside was starting to change. The stars were fading, and a soft gray light was creeping in. The sun wasn't up yet, but it was getting ready to peek over the hills. Beatrice would open the wooden shutters on the bakery's tiny window to let in some air. The cool morning breeze would come in, carrying the smell of grass and dew. Sometimes a bird would start singing, and Beatrice would smile. She loved those little sounds. They made the morning feel alive, like the world was waking up with her. She'd take a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, and then get back to work. Beatrice's husband, Thomas, was usually up by now, too. He'd come into the bakery, rubbing his eyes and yawning. "Morning, Beatrice," he'd say, his voice all sleepy and rough. She'd grin and hand him a cup of water from the bucket. They worked together, side by side like a team. Thomas would check the dough, poking it to see if it was ready. If it was puffy enough, they'd start shaping it into loaves. Beatrice liked this part. She'd take a big ball of dough and pat it into a round shape, or sometimes a long, skinny one. Her hands moved fast but gentle, like she was tucking a baby into bed. Each loaf was like a little gift for the village, and she wanted it to be perfect. Sometimes their dog, Pip, would wander into the bakery, his little tail wagging. Pip was small and scruffy, with big brown eyes that always looked like he was asking for a treat. Beatrice would laugh and say, "No bread for you, Pip," but she'd sneak him a tiny crumb when Thomas wasn't looking. Pip would gobble it up and then curl up near the oven where it was warm. The bakery was a busy place, but it was also cozy, with Beatrice, Thomas, and Pip all working together. Their cat, Muffin, might be there too, sleeping on a shelf or chasing a speck of flour that floated in the air. Beatrice loved her little family, and the bakery felt like home. As the morning went on, Beatrice's eyes would start to feel heavy. She'd been up for hours, and her body was already tired from kneading and carrying wood. She'd yawn, her mouth opening wide, and sometimes she'd stretch her arms up high to wake herself up. Thomas would see her and say, "Beatrice, you look like a sleepy owl." She'd laugh and keep going, but deep down, she was thinking about how nice it would be to crawl back into bed. Mornings were hard work, but they were also peaceful. The quiet of the early hours, the soft light coming through the window, the smell of dough, it all made Beatrice feel calm, even if she was sleepy. The village was still asleep while Beatrice worked. Outside, the houses were dark, their shutters closed tight. The only other people awake might be the farmer checking on his cows or the miller grinding wheat into flour. Everyone else was tucked in bed, dreaming. Beatrice liked knowing she was up before the world, getting the bread ready for when they woke up. It made her feel important, like she was helping the whole village start their day. She'd imagined the kids running to the bakery later, their faces lighting up when they saw the fresh loaves. That thought kept her going, even when her arms ached and her eyes drooped. Sometimes, Beatrice would take a quick break. She'd sit on a stool by the oven, feeling the warmth on her face. She might sip some water or nibble on a piece of yesterday's bread. It wasn't warm anymore, but it was still good, chewy, and a little salty. She'd close her eyes for a moment, just listening to the crackle of the fire and the soft sounds of the morning. The world felt so still, like it was holding its breath. Those little breaks were like a tiny nap, giving her just enough energy to keep going. Beatrice knew she had to finish the bread, but she also knew how to take care of herself. When the dough was ready, Beatrice and Thomas would shape all the loaves and put them in the oven. They used a long wooden paddle called a peel to slide the loaves onto the hot stone inside. The oven was so hot it made their faces red, but it was worth it. The dough would start to turn golden and the smell of baking bread would fill the bakery. It was the best smell in the world, like a warm hug you could breathe in. Beatrice would peek into the oven, watching the bread rise and turn crusty. She'd smile, knowing it was going to be a good batch. By now, the sun was starting to come up. The sky turned pink and orange and the village began to wake. Beatrice could hear roosters crowing and dogs barking. The kids would be up soon, running to the bakery for bread. Beatrice and Thomas would work fast to get the loaves out of the oven, stacking them on a table to cool. The bread was hot, so they had to be careful not to burn their fingers. Beatrice would fan herself with her apron, feeling the heat of the bakery and the tiredness in her bones. But she was happy. The bread was done, and the village would have food for the day. Mornings for Beatrice were long and busy, but they were also special. They were quiet and soft, like the world was still half asleep. She loved the way the bakery felt in those early hours with the candlelight and the smell of dough. She loved working with Thomas even when they were both yawning, and she loved knowing her bread would make people happy. Even though she was tired, her heart was full. She'd think about her bed, waiting for her later, and that thought made her smile. The straw mattress, the wool blanket, the cozy corner of the house, it was all waiting for her when the work was done. Sometimes funny things happened in the morning. Once Pip got too close to the dough and got flour all over his nose. He sneezed and Beatrice laughed so hard she almost dropped a loaf. Another time, Muffin the cat jumped onto the table and knocked over a bowl of flour. It went poof, covering everything in a white cloud. Beatrice and Thomas had to clean it up, but they were giggling the whole time. Those little moments made the morning feel light and happy, even when the work was hard. Beatrice's mornings were part of her rhythm, like a song she knew by heart. Wake up, light the fire, mix the dough, knead it, wait, shape the loaves, bake them. Every day was the same, and that sameness was comforting. It was like knowing exactly what to do, so she didn't have to think too hard. Her hands knew the work, her heart knew the routine, and her body knew when it was time to rest. That rhythm made her mornings feel calm, even when they were busy. As the sun rose higher, the village came to life. Beatrice could hear kids laughing outside, and soon they'd be at the door asking for bread. She'd smile and hand them small pieces, their eyes big and happy. The old woman would come too, thanking her for the warm loaves. Beatrice loved these moments. They made all the early mornings worth it. She'd yawn again, her eyes heavy, but she'd keep going, knowing she was doing something good. By the time the bread was ready, Beatrice was so tired she could feel it in her whole body. Her arms ached from kneading, her feet were cold from the floor, and her eyes were droopy. But she didn't mind. She knew that later, when the work was done, she'd get to rest. She'd crawl back into her cozy bed, pull the blanket up, and let sleep take her away. That thought kept her going through the morning, like a little promise she made to herself. The morning was just the start of Beatrice's day, but it was a special time. It was quiet, soft, and full of little moments that made her smile. The candlelight, the smell of dough, the crackle of the fire, it was all part of her world. And even though she was sleepy, she loved it. She loved knowing her bread would feed the village, and she loved the calm of the early hours. So as you listen to Beatrice's morning, imagine her in the bakery, moving slowly, yawning and giggling over dropped dough. Let her story wrap around you like a warm blanket, making you feel cozy and ready to drift off. Beatrice's day in the bakery was full of little jobs, one after another, like stepping stones across a quiet stream. She'd knead the dough, shape the loaves, and feed the fire, moving slowly and steadily like she was dancing to a soft, sleepy song. Each task was hard work, but it felt gentle, like waves rocking a boat on a calm lake. The bakery smelled of flour and wood smoke, and the air was warm from the big stone oven. By noon, Beatrice's arms were tired, and her yawns were big and long, like whispers telling her that sleep was waiting for her later. Let's follow Beatrice through her day, one tiny task at a time, and let her slow, cozy rhythm make you feel calm and sleepy too. The morning was still young when Beatrice started her work. The stars were fatting outside, and the village was quiet, with only a few soft sounds like a rooster crowing or a dog barking far away. Beatrice was in the bakery, a small room in her house with a dirt floor and walls made of mud and sticks. The big oven glowed with a fire she'd lit earlier, and the air was warm and toasty. Beatrice loved this time of day. It was peaceful, and she could focus on her jobs without anyone bothering her. She moved slowly, her hands knowing exactly what to do, like they had a mind of their own. Her first task was kneading the dough. This was a big job, and it took a lot of energy. Beatrice stood at a wooden table, a big bowl in front of her. The bowl was filled with dough she'd mixed earlier, made from flour, water, and a pinch of salt. The dough was sticky and soft, like a squishy cloud. Beatrice would push her hands into it, pressing down hard, then fold it over and push again. She'd turn the bowl a little, then push some more, over and over. Her arms worked hard and her shoulders got a little sore, but she didn't mind. Kneading was like a game, making the dough smooth and stretchy. Sometimes she'd hum a little tune, soft and slow, to keep herself company. The song was simple, just a few notes, but it made the work feel lighter. Kneading took a long time, maybe half an hour for each batch of dough. Beatrice had to make a lot of dough because the village needed lots of bread. She'd finish one bowl, set it aside to rise, and start on another. The dough needed to rest and get puffy, so she'd cover each bowl with a cloth and put it near the oven where it was warm. While the dough was rising, Beatrice didn't sit still. She had other jobs to do, and she moved from one to the next, like a bee buzzing from flower to flower. Her next task was feeding the fire. The oven was the heart of the bakery, and it needed to stay hot to bake the bread. Beatrice would go to the pile of wood by the door, picking up sticks and small logs. She'd carry them to the oven, her arms full, and carefully place them inside. The fire would crackle and pop, sending little sparks dancing up. Beatrice had to be careful not to let the fire get too big or too small. If it was too hot, the bread would burn and taste yucky. If it was too cold, the bread wouldn't cook right. She'd watch the flames, squinting her eyes to see if they were orange and steady. That was the perfect fire for baking. Sometimes she'd poke the logs with a long stick to move them around, making sure the heat spread evenly. Eating the fire was hard work too. The logs were heavy, and carrying them made Beatrice's back ache a little. But she liked the warmth of the oven on her face, and the smell of burning wood was cozy, like a campfire on a cool night. She'd wipe her forehead with her apron, leaving a smudge of flour, and smile. The fire was her friend, helping her make the bread that everyone loved. She'd talk to it sometimes, saying, "Come on, fire, stay nice and hot for me." It was silly, but it made her giggle, and that kept her going. After the fire was set, Beatrice would check the dough. She'd lift the cloth and poke the dough with her finger. If it sprang back slowly, it was ready to shape into loaves. This was one of her favorite jobs because it was like playing with clay. She'd take a big ball of dough and pat it gently, shaping it into a round loaf or a long, skinny one. Her hands moved softly, like she was tucking a blanket around a sleeping baby. Each loaf was special, and she'd make sure it looked just right. She'd line them up on a wooden board, ready for the oven. Sometimes she'd make a little cut on the top of each loaf with a knife, like a smile, so the bread would bake evenly. Shaping the loaves took time and care. Beatrice had to make sure each one was the right size, not too big, not too small. The village needed enough bread for everyone, so she made lots of loaves, maybe 20 or 30 in a day. Her hands were quick but gentle, and she'd hum her little song again, keeping the rhythm of her work. The bakery was warm now, and the air smelled amazing, like flour and fire and the promise of fresh bread. Beatrice's apron was covered in flour, and her hair was a little messy under her cap, but she didn't care. She was happy doing what she loved. By now, the sun was starting to rise, and the village was waking up. Beatrice could hear birds singing outside and the soft clatter of someone opening their shutters, but she stayed focused on her tasks. She'd slide the loaves into the oven using a long wooden paddle called a peel. The oven was so hot it made her cheeks red, but she was careful. She'd push the loaves in one by one and close the oven door. Then she'd wait, watching the fire and listening to the soft hiss of the bread baking. The smell was so good it made her tummy rumble, even though she'd already had a bit of bread for breakfast. While the bread baked, Beatrice had more little jobs to do. She'd sweep the floor, brushing away bits of flour and crumbs with a broom made of twigs. The floor was dirt, so it wasn't hard to clean, but she liked to keep the bakery tidy. She'd check the wood pile, making sure there was enough for the day. If it was low, she'd go outside to the wood stack and bring in more logs. The morning air was cool and fresh, and she'd take a deep breath, feeling the chill on her face. Sometimes she'd see a neighbor walking by, and they'd wave and say, "Good morning, Beatrice." She'd smile and wave back, her sleepy eyes twinkling. Beatrice's work was like a dance, moving from one task to the next without stopping. Knead the dough, feed the fire, shape the loaves, bake the bread, sweep the floor, check the wood. Each job was small, but together they made the day full. She didn't rush though. She took her time, letting each task flow into the next, like water in a stream. The rhythm was soothing like a lullaby, and it made the hard work feel gentle. Beatrice's hands were busy, but her mind was calm. She didn't worry about what was next or what she had to do later. She just focused on the job in front of her, one tiny task at a time. By noon, the bakery was hot and busy. The first batch of bread was done, and Beatrice would pull the loaves out with the peel. They were golden and crusty, with a smell that filled the whole house. She'd set them on a table to cool, fanning them with her apron so they wouldn't be too hot to touch. Her arms were aching now from all the kneading and carrying. Her back was a little sore and her feet were tired from standing on the dirt floor, but she didn't complain. She'd yawn big and loud and stretch her arms up high. The yawns were like whispers, telling her that sleep was waiting for her at the end of the day. Sometimes Beatrice's dog Pip would wander into the bakery, his little tail wagging. He'd sniff around looking for crumbs and Beatrice would laugh. "Oh, Pip, you little beggar," she'd say, tossing him a tiny piece of bread. Pip would gobble it up and then curl up near the oven where it was warm. Their cat Muffin might be there too, sleeping on a shelf or chasing a speck of flour in the air. The animals made the bakery feel cozy, like a little family working together. Beatrice loved having them around, even if they got in the way sometimes. The village kids would start coming by around noon, their voices loud and happy. They'd peek into the bakery, hopping for a treat. Beatrice would smile and break off small pieces of bread, still warm from the oven. "Here you go, little ones," she'd say, handing them out. The kids would say, "Thank you, Beatrice," and run off, munching happily. Those moments made Beatrice's heart feel full. She loved knowing her bread made people happy, especially the kids with their big smiles and dirty faces. Beatrice's tasks kept going all morning. After the first batch of bread was done, she'd start kneading more dough for the next batch. She'd check the fire again, adding more wood if it was getting low. She'd shape more loaves, slide them into the oven, and sweep the floor again. The bakery was a busy place, but Beatrice didn't feel rushed. She moved at her own pace, slow and steady, like a turtle walking along a path. Each task was a step, and she took them one at a time, never worrying about the next one until it was time. Sometimes funny things happened while Beatrice worked. Once she was kneading dough and got distracted by a bird outside. The dough slipped out of her hands and plopped onto the floor. She laughed, her sleepy chuckle filling the bakery. "Oh, Beatrice, you clumsy goose," she said, picking it up and tossing it into the pig bucket. Another time, Muffin jumped onto the table and knocked over a bowl of flour. It went poof, covering Beatrice in a white cloud. She coughed and giggled, wiping flour off her face. Thomas came in and laughed too, saying, "You look like a snowman." Those little moments made the work fun, even when it was hard. Beatrice's rhythm was what made her day special. Each task was small, but it was part of something bigger, making bread for the whole village. She didn't think about how many loaves she had to make or how long it would take. She just focused on the dough in her hands, the fire in the oven, the broom on the floor. It was like a song she knew by heart, and each task was a note played soft and slow. That rhythm kept her calm, even when her arms were tired and her eyes were heavy. By noon, the bakery was full of the smell of fresh bread. The loaves were stacked on the table, golden and warm, ready for the villagers. Beatrice's arms ached, and her yawns were bigger now, like she was ready to fall asleep standing up. She'd sit for a moment, just a quick break, and close her eyes. The warmth of the bakery, the smell of bread, the soft crackle of the fire, it was like a hug, making her feel cozy and safe. She'd think about her bed with its straw mattress and wool blanket, waiting for her at the end of the day. That thought was like a promise, keeping her going. Beatrice's tasks were hard, but they were also simple. She didn't need to think too much or make big decisions. She just did what she'd done 1,000 times before. Knead the dough, feed the fire, shape the loaves, sweep the floor. Each job was a little piece of her day, and together they made something wonderful, bread that fed the village. Beatrice loved knowing her work mattered. It made her tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that made sleep feel like a reward. Sometimes Thomas would help with the tasks. He'd knead dough or carry wood, working side by side with Beatrice. They'd talk quietly, laughing about little things, like how Pip tried to steal a loaf or how Muffin chased her tail. They were a team, and that made the work easier. Beatrice liked having Thomas there, his strong hands helping with the heavy jobs. They smiled at each other, their eyes sleepy but happy, knowing they were doing something good together. The village was busy now, with people walking around and talking. Beatrice could hear kids playing outside, their voices loud and happy. She'd look out the window and see them running, chasing each other or kicking a ball made of rags. She'd smile, knowing they'd come by soon for bread. The old women would come too, their baskets ready to carry home a loaf or two. Beatrice loved seeing them, their faces crinkled with smiles as they thanked her. It made her feel proud, even when she was so tired she could hardly stand. Beatrice's yawns were getting longer now, and her body was telling her it needed rest. But she had more tasks to do before she could stop. She'd need another batch of dough, feed the fire again, shape more loaves. The rhythm kept her going, like a gentle wave carrying her through the day. She didn't think about how tired she was or how much work was left. She just did one task at a time, letting each one lead to the next. It was like walking a path she knew well, each step familiar and easy. The bakery was her world, and she loved it. The warmth, the smells, the sounds, they were all part of her day. Even when her arms ached and her eyes drooped, she was happy. She knew her bread would make the village happy, and that was enough. By noon, the bakery was full of golden loaves, and Beatrice's heart was full too. She'd yawn again, a big sleepy yawn, and think about her bed. Sleep was waiting for her, and it would be so good when it came. As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine her in the bakery, moving from one task to another. Picture her kneading dough, her hands covered in flour, her face warm from the oven. Hear the crackle of the fire and the soft hum of her song. Let her slow, dreamy rhythm wrap around you like a cozy blanket. Her day was full of work, but it was gentle, one tiny task at a time. And when the work was done, sleep would come soft and warm, just like it will for you. Beatrice worked hard all day in the bakery. and by evening her body felt heavy, like it was ready to sink into a soft, cozy bed. All that kneading dough and hauling wood made her arms and legs tired, but it was a good kind of tired. It was like her work was carving out a special space in the day, a quiet little hollow where sleep could come and wrap her up like a warm blanket. By the time the sun started to set, Beatrice's eyelids were drooping, and she let out a soft sigh, ready to rest. Let's follow Beatrice through her day, feeling how her body got tired and how that tiredness made sleep so sweet and special, perfect for making you feel calm and sleepy too. Beatrice's day started super early, before the sun was up, when the village was dark and quiet. She'd get out of bed, her feet cold on the dirt floor, and head to the bakery. The bakery was part of her little house with walls made of mud and sticks and a roof of straw. It was a small, cozy place, but it was full of work. Beatrice's job was to make bread for the whole village, and that meant doing lots of tasks that used her whole body. By the end of the day, she was so tired she could feel it in every muscle, but that tiredness was like a friend, telling her it was time to rest. The first big job was kneading the dough. Beatrice would stand at a wooden table, a big bowl of dough in front of her. The dough was soft and sticky, made from flour, water, and a pinch of salt. She'd push her hands into it, pressing down hard, then fold it over and push again. She'd turn the bowl, push some more, and keep going over and over. It was like a workout for her arms. Her hands got strong from all that pushing, but they also got tired. After kneading one batch of dough, her arms felt heavy, like they were made of clay. She'd shake them out, wiggle her fingers, and maybe yawn, but she'd keep going because there was more dough to make. Kneading wasn't just hard on her arms, it made her shoulders ache too. Beatrice had to lean over the table, putting her whole body into the work. Her back would get a little sore, and her hands would feel stiff from gripping the dough. Sometimes she'd get a smudge of flour on her face, and she'd laugh, wiping it off with her apron. The work was tough, but Beatrice liked it. It felt good to make something with her hands, something that would feed the village. Still, by the time she finished kneading, her body was already starting to feel tired, like it was saying, "Phew, that was a lot." Another big job was hauling wood for the oven. The oven was made of stone, and it needed a fire to get hot enough to bake bread. Beatrice would go to the wood pile by the door, picking up sticks and logs. Some were small, but others were heavy, and she'd carry them in her arms, walking carefully to the oven. She'd stack the wood inside, making sure the fire stayed strong. Carrying all that wood made her arms and back tired, like when you carry a heavy backpack for a long time. Her legs got tired too, from walking back and forth to the wood pile. Sometimes she'd trip over a stick and she'd giggle, saying, "Oh, Beatrice, watch your feet." But the work kept her moving, and her body felt heavier with each trip. Feeding the fire was another job that took energy. Beatrice had to watch the flames, making sure they were just right. She'd poke the logs with a long stick, moving them around so the fire burned evenly. The oven was hot, and standing near it made her face warm and her cheeks red. She'd wipe her forehead with her apron, leaving a little flour behind, and take a deep breath. The air smelled like burning wood and baking bread, and it was cozy, but it also made her feel sleepy. All that work kneading, hauling wood, tending the fire was like a big exercise class, and Beatrice's body was getting more and more tired as the day went on. By noon, Beatrice had been working for hours. The bakery was full of the smell of fresh bread, and the first batch of loaves was cooling on the table. But there was still more to do. She'd need another batch of dough, carry more wood, and shape more loaves. Her hands were strong, but they were starting to feel sore. Her arms felt like they were made of jelly, and her legs were wobbly from standing all morning. She'd yawn big and loud and stretch her arms up high to wake herself up. Her husband Thomas would see her and say, "Beatrice, you're working so hard." She'd smile and nod, but inside she was thinking about how nice it would be to rest. Beatrice's body wasn't just tired from the big jobs. There were little tasks too, and they all added up. She swept the floor with a broom made of twigs, brushing away bits of flour and crumbs. Sweeping wasn't as hard as kneading, but it still made her arms move and her back bend. She checked the dough, lifting the cloth to see if it was puffy enough. That meant bending over and using her hands to poke and pat. She'd carry buckets of water from the well outside, and even though the buckets weren't huge, they were heavy enough to make her shoulders ache. Every little job, from sweeping to carrying, made her body feel heavier, like it was slowly getting ready for sleep. The bakery was a busy place, and Beatrice was always moving. She'd go from the table to the oven, from the woodpile to the dough bowl, back and forth all day long. Her feet got tired from standing on the hard dirt floor, and sometimes she'd wiggle her toes to make them feel better. Her apron was covered in flour, and her hair was a little messy under her cap, but she didn't care. She was too busy working, and her body was too tired to worry about how she looked. She'd just keep going, one task at a time, like a turtle moving slowly but surely. Sometimes Beatrice's dog Pip would follow her around the bakery, his little tail wagging. Pip was small and scruffy, with big eyes that always looked like he wanted a snack. Beatrice would laugh and say, "Pip, you stay out of the way," but she'd toss him a tiny crumb when Thomas wasn't looking. Pip would gobble it up and then lie down near the oven where it was warm. Their cat Muffin was there too, sleeping on a shelf or chasing a speck of flour in the air. The animals made the bakery feel cozy, but they also added to Beatrice's work. She'd have to shoo Pip away from the dough or pick up Muffin when she got too close to the loaves. Even those little things made her body a bit more tired. By afternoon, the village was awake and busy. Beatrice could hear kids playing outside, laughing and running. They'd come to the bakery, peeking in the door, hopping for a piece of bread. Beatrice would smile and break off small bits for them, saying, "Here you go, little ones." The kids would thank her and run off, their voices fading into the distance. Those moments made Beatrice happy, but they also took energy. She'd bend down to talk to the kids, hand them bread, and then stand up again, her legs feeling a little more wobbly each time. Beatrice's yawns were getting bigger now, and her eyelids were heavy like they wanted to close all on their own. She'd been working since before dawn, and her body was telling her it was tired. Her arms felt like they could barely lift the dough, and her back ached from bending over the table. But she didn't stop. She'd knead one more batch, carry one more armful of wood, shape one more loaf. Each job was small, but together they made her body feel heavy, like it was ready to sink into a soft, cozy place. The tiredness wasn't a bad thing, though. It was like a signal telling Beatrice that her work was done and sleep was coming. It was like her body was carving out a space in the day, a quiet little hollow where she could rest. She'd think about her bed with its straw mattress and wool blanket waiting for her in the corner of the house. That thought was like a warm hug, making her feel calm and ready for the end of the day. She let out a soft sigh, a little sound that said, "I'm ready to rest." Sometimes Beatrice would take a quick break. She'd sit on a stool by the oven, feeling the warmth on her face. She'd close her eyes for a moment, just letting her body relax. The bakery was quiet, except for the crackle of the fire and the soft hum of the village outside. She'd take a deep breath, smelling the bread and the wood smoke, and feel her body getting heavier. Her arms would rest in her lap, her hands still dusted with flour. She'd yawn again, so big it made her giggle. Those little breaks were like a taste of sleep, giving her just enough energy to finish her work. As the day went on, Beatrice's tiredness grew. Her legs felt like they didn't want to move anymore, and her hands were slow and clumsy. She'd drop a spoon or fumble with the dough, and she'd laugh, saying, "Oh, Beatrice, you're so sleepy." Thomas would hear her and smile, knowing she'd done a lot. He'd help with the last few tasks, carrying wood or sliding loaves into the oven. They worked together like a team, and that made the work feel lighter, even when Beatrice was so tired she could barely stand. The bakery was full of bread now, golden loaves stacked on the table, ready for the villagers. Beatrice would look at them and feel proud. All her hard work kneading, hauling, tending the fire had made something good. The village would have food, and the kids would have full bellies. That thought made her heart feel warm, even as her body felt heavy. She'd yawn again, her eyes half closed, and think about how nice it would be to lie down. Sleep was waiting, like a cozy hollow in the day, ready to hold her close. Sometimes, funny things happened that made Beatrice's tiredness feel lighter. Once Pip got under her feet while she was carrying wood, and she almost tripped. She laughed, saying, "Pip, you little troublemaker," and set the wood down to pet him. Another time, Muffin jumped onto the table and knocked over a bowl, sending flour everywhere. Beatrice coughed and giggled, wiping flour off her face. Those little moments were like bright spots in her day, making her smile even when she was so tired. They reminded her that work wasn't just hard, it was fun too. Beatrice's tiredness was like a friend, not something to fight. It was her body's way of saying, "You've done enough, now rest." She didn't worry about being tired like we sometimes do today. She didn't think, "Oh no, I need to sleep for 8 hours." She just listened to her body. When her arms ached and her eyelids drooped, she knew it was okay to slow down. By evening, when the sun was low and the sky was turning pink, Beatrice was ready to rest. She'd finish her last tasks, sweep the floor one more time, and check the fire. Then she'd let out a soft sigh, like a whisper saying, "Time for bed." The tiredness made sleep so special. Because Beatrice worked so hard, her body was ready to sink into rest, like slipping into a warm bath. She didn't need a fancy bed or a quiet room. Her straw mattress with its crunchy straw and rough wool blanket was enough. The tiredness carved out a space for sleep, like a cozy hollow in a tree where a squirrel might curl up. Beatrice would think about that hollow as she worked, knowing it was waiting for her. It was like a promise, a gentle reward for all her hard work. The village was getting quiet now, as the sun dipped below the hills. Beatrice could hear the soft sounds of evening, the wind rustling the trees, a cow mooing in the distance, the gentle creak of a neighbor's door. The bakery was warm and cozy, with the fire glowing low and the smell of bread still in the air. Beatrice's body was heavy, her arms and legs begging for rest. Her yawns were so big they made her eyes water, and her eyelids felt like they were stuck together. She'd smile, knowing sleep was close, and finish her last few tasks with slow, careful movements. Beatrice didn't rush to bed, even though she was tired. She'd take her time, washing her hands in a bucket of cold water, shaking off the flour. She'd fold her apron and set it on a stool ready for tomorrow. She'd check the fire one last time, making sure it was safe for the night. Then she'd walk to her bed, her feet dragging a little on the dirt floor. Pip would follow, his little paws pattering behind her, and Muffin might already be curled up on the mattress, purring softly. Beatrice would climb into bed, the straw crunching under her, and pull the blanket up to her chin. She'd let out a soft sigh, a sound so gentle it was like a whisper to the night. That tiredness, that heavy feeling in her body was what made sleep so good. It was like her work had built a cozy nest for her to fall into. She didn't need to worry or think too much. Her body knew what to do: rest, relax, and let sleep come. The bakery, the village, the quiet evening, they all helped her feel safe and calm. Her tiredness was a gift, a sign that she'd done something good with her day, and when she closed her eyes, sleep came softly, like a warm wave washing over her. As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine her in the bakery, her arms tired from kneading, her legs heavy from carrying wood. Picture her yawning, her eyelids drooping, her soft sigh as she thinks about bed. Let her tiredness wrap around you like a cozy blanket, making you feel calm and sleepy. Her work was hard, but it made a space for rest, a gentle hollow in the day. And when the evening came, she was ready to sink into sleep, just like you can now. Beatrice's bed wasn't fancy like the beds we have today, with soft mattresses and fluffy pillows. It was just a simple straw mattress, tucked in a cozy corner of her little house right next to the bakery. When she lay down, the straw inside made a crunchy crackling sound, like stepping on dry leaves in the fall. The blanket she used was made of rough wool, and sometimes the straw poked through, tickling her skin. But even though it wasn't perfect, it was warm and smelled faintly of fresh bread and home. It wasn't much, but for Beatrice, it was enough. Let's imagine her bed and how it helped her sleep so well, making you feel calm and sleepy too with its cozy, simple charm. Beatrice lived in a small house in a tiny village in medieval England, a long, long time ago. Her house was made of mud and sticks with a roof of straw that kept out the rain. The bakery where she and her husband Thomas made bread for the village was part of the house. It was just one big room with a dirt floor, a big stone oven, and a wooden table for kneading dough. In one corner of this room near the oven was Beatrice's bed. It wasn't in a separate bedroom like we have now. It was right there, close to the warmth of the fire and the smell of baking bread. That closeness made it feel extra cozy, like the whole house was wrapping her up in a hug. The bed itself was simple. It was a wooden frame like a low box with a big sack stuffed full of straw. The straw was dry and golden like the kind you see in a barn. It was soft enough to lie on, but not like a squishy modern mattress. When Beatrice climbed into bed, the straw would crunch and shift under her, making little crackling noises. It was like the bed was talking to her, saying, "Come on, get comfy." Sometimes, a piece of straw would poke through the sack and tickle her arm or leg. She'd giggle and push it back, not minding too much. The bed wasn't perfect, but it worked, and that was all she needed. Over the straw mattress, Beatrice had a sheet made of rough cloth, probably linen or hemp. It wasn't soft like the sheets we have today, but it was clean and did its job. On top of the sheet, she'd pull a wool blanket. The blanket was thick and heavy, made from the wool of sheep that lived in the village. It was a little scratchy, but it was warm, and that was what mattered most. In the winter, when the air was cold and the wind whistled through the cracks in the walls, that blanket was like a big, warm hug. Beatrice would snuggle under it, feeling safe and cozy, even if the straw crunched and the blanket was a bit rough. The bed was tucked in a corner near the oven, so it was always warm. The oven was made of stone and heated by a fire, and even when the fire was low at night, it gave off a gentle heat. That warmth made the corner feel like the coziest spot in the house. The air around the bed smelled like bread because the bakery was so close. It was a soft, toasty smell, like when you walk into a kitchen where someone's baking. There was also a hint of wood smoke from the fire and maybe a little bit of the earthy smell of the straw. All those smells mixed together to make the bed feel like home. Beatrice loved that smell. It was like a lullaby for her nose, helping her relax and fall asleep. Beatrice shared her bed with Thomas, her husband. The bed wasn't big, so they had to snuggle close, but they didn't mind. Being close kept them warm, especially on cold nights. Sometimes their little dog Pip would jump up and curl up at their feet. Pip was small and scruffy with soft fur and big brown eyes. He'd snore softly, and that sound was like a tiny song that made Beatrice smile as she drifted off. Their cat Muffin might sleep on the bed too, finding a spot near Beatrice's legs or even on top of the blanket. Muffin's purring was like a gentle hum, adding to the cozy feeling of the bed. With Thomas, Pip, and Muffin all there, the bed was crowded, but it felt like a little nest, full of love and warmth. The bed wasn't always comfortable. The straw inside the mattress would get flat after a while, so Beatrice and Thomas had to fluff it up now and then. They'd take the straw out, shake it, and add fresh straw from the barn. It was a messy job with bits of straw flying everywhere, but it made the bed feel softer for a while. Sometimes the straw would get lumpy, and Beatrice would wake up with a sore spot on her back. She'd laugh and say, "Oh, this old bed," and shift around until she found a comfy spot. The blanket could be itchy too, especially if it was new wool. But Beatrice didn't let those things bother her. She was too tired from her day of work to care, and the bed was good enough to make her feel safe and warm. At night, when Beatrice climbed into bed, she'd feel her whole body relax. She'd been working hard all day, kneading dough, carrying wood, tending the fire, and shaping loaves. Her arms were sore, her legs were heavy, and her eyes were droopy. The bed was like a reward, a place where she could finally rest. She'd lie down, the straw crunching under her, and pull the wool blanket up to her chin. She'd take a deep breath, smelling the bread and the wood smoke, and let out a soft sigh. That sigh was like saying, "The day is done, and now I can sleep." The bed wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and it worked. The corner where the bed was felt special. It was close to the oven, so the warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. The walls of the house were thick, keeping out the wind, and the straw roof above made a soft rustling sound if it was windy outside. The bakery was quiet at night, with only the faint crackle of the fire's embers and the soft breathing of Thomas, Pip, and Muffin. Those sounds were like a lullaby, gentle and soothing. Beatrice would close her eyes and the darkness of the room would feel like a friend, helping her relax. There were no bright lights or loud noises like we have today, no phones buzzing or TVs blaring, just the quiet, cozy corner and her simple bed. Sometimes Beatrice would wake up in the middle of the night. Back then, people didn't always sleep all at once. They sleep for a few hours, wake up for a bit, then sleep again. Beatrice might sit up, feeling the straw shift under her and look around the dark room. The fire was low, just a soft glow, and the air was cool but not too cold. She'd listen to the sounds of the night, the wind outside, the creak of the house, or maybe an owl hooting in the distance. She'd smile, feeling safe in her little corner, and lie back down. The bed would crunch again and she'd snuggle under the blanket, letting sleep come back like a gentle wave. The bed wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a place where Beatrice felt at home. She spent her days working hard making bread for the village, but the bed was where she could rest and dream. She'd think about her day as she lay there, maybe remembering a funny moment, like when Pip got flour on his nose or when a kid thanked her for a piece of bread. Those thoughts made her smile, and the bed's warmth made her feel safe. Even if the straw poked her or the blanket was scratchy, it didn't matter. The bed was her special place, where she could let go of the day and just be. Beatrice's bed was different from ours in a lot of ways. We have soft mattresses, fluffy pillows, and cozy comforters. Beatrice had straw, rough cloth, and wool. Our beds are in separate bedrooms with doors to close and lights to turn off. Beatrice's bed was in the same room as the bakery with the oven and the table nearby. But even though her bed was simple, it was perfect for her. It was warm, it was cozy, and it was hers. She didn't need anything fancy to sleep well. The tiredness from her work, the warmth of the oven, and the quiet of the night were enough to make her sleep deep and peaceful. Sometimes funny things happened in bed. Pip might snore so loud that Beatrice would giggle, waking Thomas up. "What's so funny?" he'd grumble, half asleep. Beatrice would whisper, "It's Pip, he sounds like a little pig," and they'd both laugh quietly. Other times, Muffin would decide to sleep right on Beatrice's chest, her purring so loud it was like a tiny drum. Beatrice would pet her and say, "Oh, Muffin, you're so heavy," but she'd let her stay. Those moments made the bed feel even more like home, full of love and little laughs. The bed was also a place where Beatrice felt close to her family. Thomas was right there, his breathing slow and steady as he slept. Pip was at her feet, warm and soft. Muffin was nearby, purring or stretching out her paws. Being so close made Beatrice feel safe, like she was part of a little pack. The bed was small, but it was big enough for all of them. Sometimes Thomas would roll over and take the blanket, and Beatrice would tug it back, giggling. It wasn't a perfect bed, but it was full of love, and that made it perfect for sleeping. The straw mattress had to be taken care of, just like everything else in Beatrice's life. Every few months, she and Thomas would empty out the old straw and put in fresh straw from the barn. They'd shake out the sack, sneezing as bits of straw flew around, and then stuff it full again. It was a messy job, but it made the bed feel fresh and new. Beatrice would pat the mattress when they were done, saying, "There, that's better." The fresh straw smelled sweet, like a field in summer, and it made the bed even cozier for a while. The bed wasn't just for sleeping. Sometimes Beatrice would sit on it during the day, taking a quick break from her work. She'd lean against the wall, her legs stretched out, and close her eyes for a moment. The straw would crunch as she sat, and the blanket would feel soft under her hands. She'd listen to the sounds of the bakery, the fire crackling, the dough rising, the soft hum of the village outside. Those little breaks were like a taste of sleep, giving her just enough rest to keep going. The bed was always there, waiting for her, like a friend who never left. At night, when Beatrice finally got to bed, she'd feel her whole body relax. She'd been working all day, kneading dough, carrying wood, tending the fire, and giving bread to the village kids. Her arms were sore, her legs were heavy, and her eyes were so droopy she could barely keep them open. The bed was like a soft landing place, catching her as she sank into it. She'd pull the blanket up, feeling its weight, and take a deep breath. The smell of bread, wood smoke, and straw filled her nose, and it was like a signal to her body, time to sleep. The bed wasn't quiet. The straw made its crackling sounds, and sometimes the house creaked as it settled. If the wind was blowing, the straw roof would rustle like leaves in a tree. But those sounds were gentle, like a lullaby. They didn't keep Beatrice awake, they helped her sleep. She'd listen to them, her eyes closed, and feel herself drifting off. The warmth of the oven, the weight of the blanket, the soft snores of Pip, it all worked together to make her feel cozy and safe. Beatrice didn't need a perfect bed to sleep well. She didn't need a big soft mattress or a pile of pillows. Her straw bed with its crunchy straw and scratchy blanket was enough. It was warm, it was home, and it was hers. She worked hard all day, and the bed was her reward, a place where she could rest and dream. She'd think about the village, the kids she fed, the bread she made, and she'd smile as she fell asleep. The bed wasn't perfect, but it worked, and that was all she needed. Sometimes Beatrice would dream in that bed. She might dream of baking bread with loaves rising high and golden. Or she might dream of the village kids laughing and running. Her dreams were soft and happy like her life. The bed held her close, keeping her safe as she dreamed, and the straw's gentle crunch was like a whisper saying, "Sleep, Beatrice, sleep." She'd wake up in the morning, feeling rested, ready to start another day of work. The bed was a small thing, but it was a big part of Beatrice's life. It was where she rested after a long day, where she felt close to her family, where she dreamed her dreams. It wasn't fancy, but it didn't need to be. It was warm, it was cozy, and it smelled like home. Beatrice would climb into it each night, her body tired, her heart full, and let sleep come. The straw might poke, the blanket might scratch, but none of that mattered. The bed worked, and it helped her sleep so well. As you listen to Beatrice's story, picture her bed in that cozy corner. Imagine the crunchy straw, the heavy wool blanket, the faint smell of bread and wood smoke. Hear the soft sounds of the night, the crackle of the fire, the rustle of the roof, the snores of Pip and Muffin. Let the bed's simple warmth wrap around you like a hug, making you feel calm and sleepy. Beatrice's bed wasn't perfect, but it was enough, and it helped her rest so peacefully. Let her story carry you to sleep, just like her bed carried her. Beatrice's bed was a cozy, crowded place, full of warmth and love. She shared it with her husband, Thomas, and sometimes their little dog, Pip, who snored softly like a tiny, sleepy engine. The warmth of their bodies made the small bed feel safe, like a snug little nest in their tiny house. Even their cat, Muffin, would curl up nearby, her gentle purring sounding like a soft lullaby. The bed wasn't big, but it was full of comfort, with everyone close together, keeping each other warm in the quiet night. Let's imagine Beatrice's bedtime, with her family snuggled around her, and let it make you feel calm and sleepy, like you're tucked into a cozy corner too. Beatrice lived in a small house in a little village in medieval England, a long, long time ago. Her house was made of mud and sticks, with a straw roof that rustled when the wind blew. The bakery where she and Thomas made bread for the village was part of the house, so the air always smelled like fresh bread and wood smoke. Their bed was in a corner of this one big room, close to the big stone oven that kept the house warm. The bed was simple, just a wooden frame with a mattress stuffed with straw, covered by a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket. It wasn't a fancy bed, but it was perfect for Beatrice because it was where she could rest with the people and animals she loved most. Every night, Beatrice would climb into bed with Thomas. He was a big man with strong hands from kneading dough, but he was gentle and kind, and his sleepy smile made Beatrice feel happy. The bed was small, so they had to snuggle close, their shoulders touching and their legs tucked together. That closeness was nice, especially on cold nights when the air was chilly and the wind whistled outside. Thomas's warmth was like a big warm blanket, making Beatrice feel safe and cozy. She'd listen to his slow, steady breathing as he fell asleep, and it was like a soft rhythm that helped her relax. Sometimes their little dog Pip would jump up onto the bed too. Pip was a small, scruffy dog with soft brown fur and big, shiny eyes. He loved to be close to Beatrice and Thomas, and he'd find a spot at the foot of the bed, curling up into a little ball. Pip's fur was warm, and his tiny snores were so soft they sounded like a whisper. Beatrice would giggle when she heard him, saying, "Oh, Pip, you sound like a little bee buzzing." His snores were like a lullaby, a gentle sound that made the bed feel even cozier. Pip didn't always sleep on the bed. Sometimes he'd curl up on the floor near the oven, but when he did, it made Beatrice's heart feel full. Muffin, their gray cat, was another bedtime friend. Muffin loved warm places, so she'd often sleep near the bed, on a shelf by the oven, or right on the blanket by Beatrice's legs. Muffin's purring was soft and steady, like the hum of a tiny motor. It was such a calming sound, like a song that said, "Everything is okay, go to sleep." Sometimes Muffin would stretch out her paws and touch Beatrice's leg, or she'd climb right onto the bed and curl up on Beatrice's chest. Beatrice would pet her gently, feeling the soft fur and the warm purr, and smile. Having Muffin so close made the bed feel like a safe, happy place full of love. The bed wasn't big, so it could get crowded with Beatrice, Thomas, Pip, and sometimes Muffin all squeezed in. But Beatrice didn't mind. The closeness made her feel safe, like she was part of a little family pack. Back then, people didn't have separate bedrooms like we do now. Families slept together in one room, sharing beds or mattresses on the floor. It was normal to be close, and it helped keep everyone warm. The house was small, with just one big room, so the bed was right there near the bakery table and the oven. The warmth from the oven's fire, even when it was low at night, made the corner feel snug, like a little cave where Beatrice and her family could rest. When Beatrice climbed into bed, she'd feel the straw mattress crunch under her. It was stuffed with dry straw, and it made a crackling sound like stepping on leaves. The blanket was heavy wool, a little scratchy but so warm. She'd pull it up to her chin, feeling the weight of it, and snuggle close to Thomas. His body was warm, and his slow breathing was like a signal that it was time to sleep. Pip would wiggle into his spot, his little snores starting almost right away. Muffin might jump up, her paws soft on the blanket, and find her place near Beatrice's feet. The bed was full, but it was perfect, like a cozy nest filled with love. The warmth of everyone together made the bed feel special. In medieval times, winters could be cold, and the house wasn't like ours with heaters and thick walls. The wind would sneak through cracks in the mud walls, and the straw roof would rustle. But with Thomas, Pip, and Muffin close by, Beatrice didn't feel the cold. Their bodies were like little heaters, keeping the bed warm and toasty. She'd tuck her feet under Pip or lean against Thomas, feeling their warmth spread through her. It was like being wrapped in a big, soft hug, and it made her feel so safe she could close her eyes and drift off. Sometimes funny things happened in bed. Pip might snore extra loud like a little trumpet, and Beatrice would giggle, waking Thomas up. "What's that noise?" He'd mumble half asleep. Beatrice would whisper, "It's Pip dreaming of chasing rabbits," and they'd both laugh quietly. Other times, Muffin would decide to walk across the bed, stepping on Beatrice's tummy or Thomas's legs. She'd meow softly like she was saying, "Move over." Beatrice would pet her and say, "Oh, Muffin, you're such a bossy cat." Those little moments made the bed feel alive, full of love and silly sounds that made Beatrice smile as she fell asleep. The bed wasn't just for sleeping. It was a place where Beatrice felt close to her family. During the day, she and Thomas were busy in the bakery, kneading dough and baking bread. But at night in bed, they could be together just resting. They talked softly before falling asleep about the day or the village or something funny Pip did. Beatrice might say, "Did you see how that kid Tommy ran off with his bread today?" And Thomas would chuckle, saying, "He's faster than Pip chasing a squirrel." Those quiet talks made the bed feel like a special place, where they could share their thoughts and feel close. Pip and Muffin made the bed even more special. Pip's snores were like a little song, and Muffin's purrs were like a soft hum. Together, they made the bed feel alive, like it was full of tiny heartbeats. Beatrice loved listening to them as she lay there, her eyes getting heavy. Sometimes Pip would dream, his little paws twitching like he was running in his sleep. Beatrice would reach down and pet him, saying, "What are you chasing, Pip?" Muffin might stretch out, her paws pushing against the blanket, and Beatrice would feel the gentle vibration of her purr. Those sounds were like a lullaby, helping Beatrice relax and drift off. The bed was small, but it was just right for Beatrice and her family. They didn't need a big bed or a fancy room. The straw mattress, the wool blanket, and the warmth of everyone together were enough. The house was simple, with a dirt floor and a straw roof, but it was home. The bakery was right there, so the air smelled like bread and wood smoke even at night. That smell was comforting, like a reminder of all the good work Beatrice did during the day. It made the bed feel like part of her life, not just a place to sleep. Sometimes Beatrice would wake up in the middle of the night. Back then, people didn't always sleep all at once. They sleep for a few hours, wake up for a bit, then sleep again. Beatrice might sit up, feeling the straw crunch, and look around the dark room. The fire in the oven was low, just a soft glow, and the air was cool but warm enough because of Thomas, Pip, and Muffin. She'd listen to their breathing, Thomas's slow and deep, Pip's tiny snores, Muffin's gentle purrs. Those sounds made her feel like she wasn't alone, like her family was right there with her, even in the dark. When Beatrice woke up like that, she didn't feel scared. The bed was her safe place, with everyone she loved close by. She might whisper to Thomas, saying, "Are you awake?" If he was, they'd talk quietly about little things, like the bread they'd bake tomorrow or how Pip got flour on his nose. If Thomas was asleep, Beatrice would just lie there listening to the night. The wind might rustle the straw roof, or an owl might hoot outside. Those sounds, mixed with the snores and purrs, were like a song that told her everything was okay. She'd snuggle back under the blanket, feeling Thomas's warmth, and fall back asleep. The bed was a place where Beatrice could rest after a long day. She worked hard in the bakery, kneading dough, carrying wood, and giving bread to the village kids. By evening, her arms were sore, her legs were heavy, and her eyes were droopy. The bed was like a reward, a cozy spot where she could finally relax. She'd climb in, the straw crunching, and feel her whole body let go. Thomas would be there, his warmth making her feel safe. Pip's snores and Muffin's purrs would fill the air like a soft lullaby. The bed wasn't perfect, the straw was lumpy, the blanket was scratchy, but it was enough because it was full of love. Sometimes the bed was a little messy. Pip might bring in some dirt on his paws, or Muffin would leave a few hairs on the blanket. Beatrice didn't mind. She'd shake out the blanket or sweep the dirt off the mattress, laughing as she did it. "You two are so messy," she'd say, petting Pip and Muffin. The bed was a lived-in place, full of the little marks of her family. That messiness made it feel real, like it belonged to them. Beatrice loved that her bed was a place where everyone could be together, even if it meant a few crumbs or hairs. The warmth of the bed was one of the best things about it. Thomas's body was like a big heater, keeping Beatrice warm even on the coldest nights. Pip's little body was warm too, curled up at her feet. Muffin's purring added a tiny bit of heat, like a small candle burning nearby. Together, they made the bed feel like the coziest spot in the world. Beatrice would pull the blanket up, tucking it around her and Thomas, and feel like she was in a safe little cocoon. The oven's warmth helped too, spreading through the corner of the room. Even when the wind howled outside, the bed was a warm, safe place. Beatrice's bed was also a place for dreaming. As she lay there with Thomas breathing, Pip snoring, and Muffin purring, she'd drift off into soft, happy dreams. She might dream of the bakery, with golden loaves of bread piling up high. Or she might dream of the village kids, laughing and running with their pieces of bread. The sounds of her family, Thomas's breaths, Pip's snores, Muffin's purrs, were like a gentle song that carried her into those dreams. The bed was her safe place, where she could let go of the day and let her mind wander. Sometimes the bed was a little too crowded. Thomas might roll over and take the blanket, leaving Beatrice chilly. She'd tug it back, giggling, and say, "Thomas, share." Pip might stretch out and push against her legs, taking up too much space. Muffin might decide to sleep right on Beatrice's chest, her purring loud in her ear. But Beatrice loved these little moments. They made the bed feel alive, like it was full of love and laughter. She'd pet Pip or Muffin, whisper to Thomas, and settle back down, feeling happy to have them all so close. The bed was a place where Beatrice felt connected to her family. During the day, she and Thomas were busy, working hard to make bread, but at night they could be together, just resting. Pip and Muffin were part of that family too, with their snores and purrs adding to the cozy feeling. The bed was like a little world where everyone was close and safe. Beatrice didn't need a big house or a fancy bed. Her small, crowded bed with its crunchy straw and warm blanket was perfect because it was full of the people and animals she loved. As the night went on, the village got quieter. The sounds of the day, kids playing, neighbors talking, faded away. The only sounds were the soft ones, the wind outside, the creak of the house, the crackle of the fire's embers. And of course, Thomas's breathing, Pip's snores, and Muffin's purrs. Those sounds were like a blanket of their own, wrapping Beatrice in comfort. She'd lie there, feeling the warmth of her family, and let sleep come. The bed wasn't big or soft, but it was enough. It was her place, her family's place, and it made her sleep so sweet. Beatrice's bed teaches us something simple. You don't need a perfect bed to sleep well. You don't need a big room or a soft mattress. Beatrice's bed was small, lumpy, and crowded, but it was full of love. Thomas, Pip, and Muffin made it special, their warmth and sounds creating a cozy little world. As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine her bed with its crunchy straw and heavy blanket. Picture Thomas sleeping beside her, Pip snoring at her feet, Muffin purring nearby. Let those sounds, the snores, the purrs, the soft breaths wrap around you like a lullaby, making you feel calm and sleepy. Beatrice's bed was her safe place, and her story can help you find your own cozy place to rest. When night fell in Beatrice's little village in medieval England, the world outside her small house came alive with soft, gentle noises. It wasn't loud like our world today, with cars honking or TVs blaring. Instead, the sounds were quiet and soothing, like a song that helped you feel sleepy. Goats bleated faintly in the distance, their soft baa floating through the air. The wind rustled the straw roof of Beatrice's house, making a whispery sound like leaves dancing. Inside, the oven's embers popped softly like tiny firecrackers saying goodnight. All these sounds wove together like threads in a cozy blanket, making a natural lullaby that cradled Beatrice into sleep. Let's listen to the sounds of her night, imagining her little village, and let them make you feel calm and sleepy too. Beatrice's house was small, made of mud and sticks, with a roof of straw that kept out the rain. The bakery where she and her husband, Thomas, made bread was part of the house. By night, the bakery was quiet, and the big stone oven was cooling down, its fire low and soft. Beatrice's bed, a straw mattress with a wool blanket, was tucked in a corner near the oven. As she lay down, ready to rest after a long day of kneading dough and hauling wood, the sounds of the night surrounded her. They weren't loud or scary, they were gentle, like a hug from the world, helping her relax and drift off. Outside, the village was dark and still. There were no streetlights or glowing signs like we have today. The only light came from the moon and stars, shining like tiny candles in the sky. The village was full of soft sounds, and each one added to the peaceful feeling of the night. The goats, who lived in pens near the houses, would bleat quietly, their voices small and far away. Ba ba, they'd say, like they were talking in their sleep. Beatrice would hear them as she lay in bed, and their soft bleats were like a little song, calming her mind. The wind was another sound of the night. It blew gently through the village, rustling the straw roofs of the houses. The straw would make a soft, swishy sound like someone brushing their hair. Sometimes the wind was stronger and the rustling got a little louder, but it was never scary. It was like the village was whispering, "Sh8, go to sleep." Beatrice loved that sound. She'd lie in her bed, the straw mattress crunching under her, and listen to the wind. It made her feel like the world was alive, but in a quiet, gentle way, helping her eyes get heavy. Inside the house, the oven's embers made their own soft noises. During the day, the oven was full of roaring flames to bake the bread. But at night, the fire was low, just a pile of glowing embers. They'd pop and crackle like tiny snaps or the sound of cereal in a bowl. It wasn't loud, just a soft, steady sound that filled the bakery with warmth. Beatrice would hear it as she snuggled under her blanket, and it was like the oven was saying, "Good job today, now rest." The popping embers were part of her lullaby, mixing with the goats and the wind to make the night feel cozy. There were other sounds too, all around the village. Sometimes an owl would hoot in the distance, its hoo-hoo soft and low like a friend calling out. Other times a dog would bark, maybe Pip, Beatrice's little scruffy dog, or another dog in the village. The barks were never loud or sharp, they were just little yips like the dogs were saying hello to the night. Beatrice's cat Muffin might add her own sound, purring softly as she curled up near the bed. The purr was like a tiny motor humming gently, and it made Beatrice smile as she listened. All these sounds, the goats, the wind, the embers, the owl, the dogs, the cat, came together like a quiet song, wrapping around Beatrice and helping her sleep. The house itself made noises too. The walls were made of mud and sticks, and the roof was straw, so when the wind blew, the house would creak a little. It was a soft, squeaky sound, like an old chair rocking. The wooden beams in the roof might groan just a tiny bit as the house settled for the night. These sounds weren't scary, they were familiar, like the house was alive and breathing with Beatrice. She'd listen to them as she lay in bed, her head on the straw mattress, and feel like the house was keeping her safe. The creaks and groans were part of her lullaby, adding to the cozy feeling of the night. Sometimes, Beatrice's family added their own sounds to the night. Thomas, her husband, would be in bed next to her, his breathing slow and steady. It wasn't loud, just a soft in and out like waves on a quiet beach. Pip, their little dog, would curl up at the foot of the bed, snoring softly. His snores were tiny, like a little whistle, and they made Beatrice giggle. "Oh, Pip, you sound like a tiny pig," she'd whisper, smiling in the dark. Muffin's purring was another sound, so gentle it was like a hum you could feel in your chest. These sounds, Thomas's breathing, Pip's snores, Muffin's purrs, were the best part of the night's lullaby. They made Beatrice feel like her family was close, keeping her safe and warm. The village was full of animals, and they all added to the night's sounds. Besides the goats, there were cows in barns, mooing softly as they settled down. Chickens might cluck quietly in their coops, dreaming of the morning. Sheep would baa now and then, their voices mixing with the goats' bleats. These animal sounds were far away, floating through the village like a soft breeze. Beatrice would hear them as she lay in bed, and they made her feel like the whole village was resting together. It was like everyone, people, animals, even the houses, was part of the same sleepy song. The wind was a big part of the night's sounds, and it changed with the seasons. In the summer, it was warm and gentle, rustling the straw roof like a soft whisper. In the winter, it was colder and stronger, making the roof creak and the walls shiver. But even when it was strong, the wind wasn't scary. It was like a friend singing a song to help Beatrice sleep. She'd listen to it, imagining it blowing through the fields and over the hills, carrying the village into the night. The wind's rustle was like a soft hand patting her, saying, "Close your eyes, it's time to rest." Sometimes there were other little sounds that made the night special. A mouse might scurry across the floor, its tiny feet pattering so softly Beatrice could barely hear it. She'd smile, knowing it was just looking for a crumb from the bakery. A frog might croak near the stream that ran through the village, its deep ribbit adding to the night's music. If it had rained, the sound of water dripping from the straw roof would make a soft plip-plop, like a tiny drum. These sounds were small, but they were part of the village's lullaby, making Beatrice feel like she was part of a big, quiet world. The darkness of the night helped make the sounds stand out. There were no bright lights to distract Beatrice, no glowing screens or noisy machines. The village was dark, with only the moon and stars outside and the faint glow of the oven's embers inside. That darkness made the sounds clearer, like they were painted on a quiet canvas. Beatrice would lie in bed, her eyes closed, and let the sounds wash over her. The goats' bleats, the wind's rustle, the embers' pops, they were like a story, telling her the village was safe and resting. Beatrice's bed was in a corner near the oven, so the sounds of the bakery were close. The embers' soft pops were the loudest sound inside, but they weren't loud at all. They were gentle, like a friend whispering good night. The warmth from the oven made the corner cozy, and the sounds made it even cozier. Beatrice would pull her wool blanket up, feeling the straw mattress crunch under her, and listen. The sounds of the night were like a blanket of their own, wrapping her up and helping her relax. She didn't need to think or worry, she just listened, and sleep came softly. Sometimes the night sounds were extra special. If there was a breeze, the trees outside would sway, their leaves making a soft shushing sound like someone saying, "SH8, go to sleep." If it was a clear night, Beatrice might peek through a crack in the shutters and see the stars, but the sounds were what she loved most. They made her feel like the village was alive, even when it was quiet. The goats, the wind, the embers, the owls, they were all part of her world, and they helped her feel safe as she drifted off. Beatrice's family added to the night's lullaby too. Thomas's breathing was like a steady beat, keeping time for the other sounds. Pip's snores were like a little melody, soft and funny. Muffin's purrs were like a hum that tied it all together. Beatrice would listen to them, her head on the straw mattress, and feel her heart slow down. The sounds of her family were the best part of the night because they reminded her she wasn't alone. Even in the dark, with the village quiet, she had Thomas, Pip, and Muffin right there with her. The night sounds weren't always the same. Some nights the wind was stronger, making the straw roof rustle louder. Other nights the goats were quieter or an owl hooted more often. But even when the sounds changed, they were always gentle, like a song that never got too loud. Beatrice loved that about the night. It was like the world knew she was tired and needed a soft, soothing lullaby. She'd lie in bed, the straw crunching as she shifted, and let the sounds carry her away. They were like a river, flowing softly, taking her to sleep. Sometimes funny things happened with the night sounds. Once Pip's snores got so loud they sounded like a little trumpet, and Beatrice giggled, waking Thomas up. "What's that noise?" he mumbled, and Beatrice whispered, "It's Pip dreaming of chasing goats." They laughed quietly, snuggling closer under the blanket. Another time an owl hooted so close to the house it sounded like it was right outside the window. Beatrice smiled, imagining the owl perched on the roof, singing its night song. Those little moments made the night sounds even more special, like they were part of her family's story. The sounds of the night were different from the sounds of the day. During the day, the village was noisy, with kids laughing, neighbors talking, and the clatter of work. But at night, everything slowed down. The goats' bleats were softer, the wind's rustle was gentler, and the oven's pops were quieter. It was like the village was taking a big, deep breath, ready to rest. Beatrice loved that change. It was like the world was saying, "The day is done, now sleep." She'd listen to the sounds, her eyes closing, and feel her body relax. The night sounds were a big part of why Beatrice slept so well. Her day was full of hard work, kneading dough, carrying wood, baking bread. By evening, her arms were sore, her legs were heavy, and her eyes were droopy. The sounds of the night were like a gift, helping her let go of the day. The goats' bleats, the wind's rustle, the embers' pops, they were like friends, whispering to her that it was okay to rest. She'd pull her blanket up, feel the warmth of Thomas and Pip, and listen to Muffin's purrs. The sounds wove together like a cozy blanket, cradling her into sleep. As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine the sounds of her night. Picture the goats bleating softly, the wind rustling the straw roof, the oven's embers popping gently. Hear Thomas's breathing, Pip's snores, Muffin's purrs, all mixing with the village sounds. Let them wrap around you like a lullaby, making you feel calm and sleepy. Beatrice's night was full of gentle noises, and they helped her sleep so peacefully. Let her story carry you to sleep too, with the soft, soothing sounds of her quiet village. Beatrice worked hard all day in the bakery, making bread for her little village in medieval England, a long, long time ago. A night when she climbed into her straw bed, she was so tired her eyes were heavy and her body felt ready to rest. But sometimes in the middle of the night, Beatrice would wake up. The world was dark and quiet, with only the soft creak of the house breaking the silence. This wasn't strange back then, it was called segmented sleep, and lots of people did it. Beatrice would lie still, maybe whisper to her husband, Thomas, or just listen to the night. Then, with no rush or worry, she'd drift back to sleep, cozy and calm. Let's imagine Beatrice's midnight break, with the quiet night all around her, and let it make you feel sleepy and peaceful too. Beatrice's house was small, made of mud and sticks, with a straw roof that kept out the rain. The bakery where she and Thomas made bread was part of the house, so the air always smelled like fresh bread and wood smoke. Her bed was a simple straw mattress tucked in a corner near the big stone oven, which gave off a gentle warmth even at night. The mattress was covered with a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket. When Beatrice went to bed, she'd snuggle close to Thomas, their little dog, Pip, curled up at their feet, and their cat, Muffin, purring nearby. The bed was cozy and the night was quiet, perfect for sleeping. But sometimes, Beatrice's eyes would open in the dark and she'd find herself awake. This waking up in the middle of the night was normal back then. People didn't always sleep all at once like we try to do now. They'd sleep for a few hours, wake up for a bit, and then sleep again. They called it segmented sleep, like sleep that was split into two parts. Beatrice didn't think it was weird, it was just how her body worked. When she woke up, the house was dark, with only a faint glow from the oven's embers. The village outside was silent, except for little sounds like the wind rustling the straw roof or a soft creak from the wooden beams in the house. Those sounds were gentle, like a whisper, and they made Beatrice feel calm. When Beatrice woke, she'd lie still in her bed, the straw crunching a little if she moved. She didn't get up or light a candle, she just stayed there, warm under her blanket. Her eyes would adjust to the dark, and she could see the shapes of the bakery, the table where she kneaded dough, the oven glowing softly, the shelves where Muffin liked to sleep. The house felt safe, like a cozy cave, and Beatrice didn't feel scared or worried. She'd listen to the creak of the house, a soft squeak as the wood settled, and it was like the house was breathing with her, keeping her company in the quiet night. Sometimes Beatrice would turn to Thomas and whisper, "Are you awake?" If he was, his voice would come back, soft and sleepy. "Aye, Beatrice, what's on your mind?" They'd talk quietly, their words barely louder than a breath. They might talk about the day, like how the bread turned out or how Pip chased a mouse in the bakery. Other times, they'd talk about little things, like the stars they saw before bed or what they'd bake tomorrow. Their whispers were gentle, like a secret between them, and they made the midnight break feel special. It was like a little moment just for them in the dark, cozy corner of their house. If Thomas was asleep, Beatrice would just lie there, listening to his slow, steady breathing. It was a soft sound, like waves lapping on a quiet shore, and it made her feel safe. Pip would be snoring at the foot of the bed, his tiny snores like a little whistle. Muffin's purring would hum nearby, a gentle vibration that felt like a hug. These sounds, Thomas's breathing, Pip's snores, Muffin's purrs, were like a lullaby, wrapping around Beatrice and helping her relax. They reminded her that her family was close, even in the dark, and that made the midnight break feel warm and comforting. The village outside was full of soft sounds too. The wind might rustle the straw roof, making a swishy sound like someone sweeping the floor. An owl could hoot in the distance, its hoo-hoo low and gentle like a friend saying hello. Goats in their pens might bleat faintly, their baa so soft it was like a whisper. Sometimes a dog would bark, maybe Pip's friend from down the road, but it was never loud or sharp. These sounds were part of the night's quiet song, mixing with the creak of the house to make Beatrice feel like the world was resting with her. Beatrice didn't worry when she woke up in the night. Today we might think, "Oh no, I can't sleep," and toss and turn. But Beatrice didn't do that. She knew her body would sleep again soon, and she let the midnight break be a calm, peaceful time. She'd lie still, her hands resting on the blanket, and let her mind wander. She might think about the bread she baked that day, how golden and crusty it was. Or she'd remember the village kids, their happy faces when she gave them pieces of warm bread. Those thoughts were soft and happy, like clouds floating in her mind, and they helped her feel content. Sometimes Beatrice would think about the next day. She'd imagine kneading dough, the soft squish of it under her hands, or tending the oven's fire, the warmth on her face. But these thoughts weren't stressful, they were comforting, like knowing her work was important. She didn't rush to plan or worry about what might go wrong. She just let her thoughts drift, like leaves on a slow river, and the quiet of the night helped her stay calm. The creak of the house, the rustle of the wind, the soft snores of Pip, they all kept her company, making the midnight break a gentle, restful time. The darkness of the night was part of what made the midnight break so special. There were no bright lights in Beatrice's village, no glowing screens or buzzing phones. The only light came from the faint glow of the oven's embers or a sliver of moonlight sneaking through a crack in the shutters. That darkness was like a soft blanket, wrapping around Beatrice and helping her relax. It made the sounds of the night, the creak of the house, the wind, the animals, stand out like stars in a clear sky. Beatrice would close her eyes, even though it was already dark, and let the darkness hold her like a friend saying, "It's okay to rest." Sometimes Beatrice would feel a little chilly when she woke up. The oven's warmth was soft at night, but the air could be cool, especially in winter. She'd pull the wool blanket closer, tucking it around her and Thomas. If Pip was on the bed, his warm little body would be like a tiny heater at her feet. Muffin's purring would add a bit of warmth too, like a small candle burning nearby. Beatrice would snuggle closer to Thomas, feeling his warmth, and the bed would feel cozy again. The straw mattress might crunch as she moved, but that sound was familiar, like the house saying, "I'm here for you." The midnight break wasn't a time for doing things. Beatrice didn't get up to work or clean. She didn't light a candle to read or write. Most people back then didn't read anyway. She just stayed in bed, letting the night be quiet and still. Sometimes she'd stretch her arms or wiggle her toes, feeling the tiredness from her day of work. Her arms were sore from kneading dough, her legs heavy from carrying wood. But that tiredness was good. It made the bed feel like a reward, a soft place to rest. The midnight break was like a pause, a little gift of calm in the middle of the night. If Beatrice felt a bit restless, she might think about happy things to calm her mind. She'd picture the village in the morning with kids running to the bakery for bread. She'd imagine their smiles, their little hands holding warm loaves. Or she'd think about Pip, how he got flour on his nose and sneezed, making her laugh. Those thoughts were like soft pillows, making her mind feel cozy and ready for sleep. The sounds of the night, the creak of the house, the wind, the snores, helped her thoughts stay gentle, keeping worries away. Sometimes funny things happened during the midnight break. Pip might snore extra loud like a little trumpet, and Beatrice would giggle, her laugh soft in the dark. If Thomas was awake, he'd grumble, "What's so funny?" And Beatrice would whisper, "Pip's dreaming of chasing cats." They'd laugh together, their voices quiet so they wouldn't wake Muffin. Other times, Muffin might stretch out and push her paws against Beatrice's leg like she was saying, "This is my spot." Beatrice would pet her, feeling the soft fur, and say, "Oh, Muffin, you're so bossy." Those little moments made the midnight break feel warm and happy, like a tiny party in the dark. The midnight break wasn't long, maybe an hour or two. Beatrice didn't have a clock to tell time, but she didn't need one. Her body knew when it was ready to sleep again. She'd feel her eyes getting heavy, her yawns coming back, and she'd know it was time to drift off. The sounds of the night would help, like a gentle song pulling her back to sleep. The creak of the house, the rustle of the wind, Thomas's breathing, they were like a lullaby, soft and steady. Beatrice would snuggle deeper under the blanket, the straw mattress crunching one last time, and let sleep come. The midnight break was special because it wasn't rushed. Today we might worry about waking up at night, thinking we need to sleep all at once. But Beatrice didn't worry. She knew the midnight break was part of her sleep, like a little rest stop on a long journey. She'd lie there, calm and content, enjoying the quiet. Sometimes she'd think about the stars outside, twinkling in the dark sky. Other times, she'd just listen to the night, letting the sounds wash over her like a warm wave. There was no hurry, no stress, just a peaceful moment in the dark. Beatrice's house was full of little sounds that made the midnight break cozy. The wooden beams might creak again, like the house was stretching. The straw roof would rustle if the wind picked up, a soft, swishy sound. The oven's embers might pop, a tiny snap that was barely there. These sounds were familiar, like old friends, and they made Beatrice feel at home. She'd listen to them, her head on the straw mattress, and feel her heart slow down. The sounds were like a promise that everything was okay, helping her relax and sleep. The village added its own sounds to the midnight break. An owl's hoot might float through the air, soft and far away. A goat might bleat, its baw so quiet it was like a dream. The stream that ran through the village could gurgle, a gentle bubbling sound that was almost too soft to hear. These sounds were part of the night's lullaby, mixing with the house's creaks and the family's noises. Beatrice would listen, her eyes closed, and feel like the whole village was sleeping with her, all wrapped in the same quiet song. Sometimes, Beatrice would feel a little hungry during the midnight break. She might think about the bread she baked that day, how warm and crusty it was. But she didn't get up to eat, she just imagined the taste, smiling in the dark. Other times, she'd feel a bit cold and pull the blanket tighter, snuggling closer to Thomas. His warmth, Pip's little body, and Muffin's purring made the bed feel like the coziest place in the world. The midnight break was a time to be still, to rest, to let the night take care of her. The midnight break was also a time for dreaming, even when Beatrice was awake. She'd let her mind wander, thinking about happy things. She might imagine a perfect loaf of bread, golden and fluffy, or a sunny day in the village with kids playing. Those thoughts were like soft clouds floating through her mind, keeping her calm. The sounds of the night helped, making her thoughts gentle and peaceful. The creak of the house, the wind's rustle, Pip's snores, they were like a frame around her dreams, holding them close. Beatrice's midnight break teaches us something simple. Waking up in the night isn't something to worry about. It can be a quiet, cozy time, a little break to enjoy the dark and the sounds around you. Beatrice didn't rush or stress, she just let the night be, and sleep came back when it was ready. Her bed, with its crunchy straw and warm blanket, was her safe place, and her family's sounds were her lullaby. As you listen to her story, imagine the midnight break, with the creak of the house and the soft snores of Pip. Let the quiet of Beatrice's night wrap around you, like a cozy blanket, helping you feel calm and sleepy. Beatrice lived in a tiny village in medieval England a long, long time ago, where life was simple and quiet. Her days were filled with hard work in the bakery, kneading dough and baking bread for the village. At night, she'd climb into her straw bed, tired and ready to rest. On clear nights, something special happened. Beatrice could see stars through a small crack in the wooden shutter of her house. The sky was huge, like a giant blanket covered in twinkling lights. Those stars made her feel calm, reminding her to let go of the day and let the darkness wrap her up like a kind friend. Let's imagine Beatrice's nights under the starry sky with its soft glow and quiet beauty, and let it make you feel cozy and sleepy too. Beatrice's house was small, made of mud and sticks, with a straw roof that kept out the rain. The bakery where she and her husband Thomas worked was part of the house, so the air always smelled like fresh bread and wood smoke. Her bed was a simple straw mattress tucked in a corner near the big stone oven, which stayed warm even at night. The mattress was covered with a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket. Beatrice would snuggle in next to Thomas with their little dog, Pip, curled up at their feet, and their cat, Muffin, purring nearby. The bed was cozy, but the stars outside made the night feel even more special. When Beatrice went to bed, the village was dark and quiet. There were no street lights or glowing screens like we have today. The only light came from the moon and stars, shining like tiny candles in the sky. Her house had wooden shutters over the windows to keep out the wind, but one shutter had a small crack, just big enough for Beatrice to peek through. On clear nights, when the clouds were gone, she could see the stars twinkling through that crack. They were bright and sparkly, like little diamonds scattered across a big, black blanket. Beatrice loved those nights because the stars made her feel like the world was watching over her. Before climbing into bed, Beatrice might step outside for a moment to look at the sky. She'd wrap her shawl around her shoulders, her bare feet cold on the dirt path, and tilt her head back. The sky was so big it seemed to go on forever, filled with more stars than she could count. They twinkled softly, some bright, some faint, like a giant picture painted just for her. The air was cool and fresh, smelling of grass and earth, and the village was silent except for soft sounds like the wind or a distant goat bleating. Beatrice would smile, feeling small but safe, like the stars were her friends, shining down to say, "Good night." Back inside, Beatrice would climb into bed, the straw mattress crunching under her. She'd pull the wool blanket up to her chin and lie on her side, facing the window with the cracked shutter. Through that tiny crack, she could see a sliver of the sky with a few stars twinkling brightly. The darkness of the room made the stars stand out like little lights in a sea of black. Beatrice would stare at them, her eyes getting heavy, and feel her heart slow down. The stars were like a reminder to let go of the day, to stop thinking about the bread she baked or the work for tomorrow. They told her it was okay to rest, to let the night hold her gently. The stars made Beatrice feel calm because they were always there night after night. Even if clouds hid them sometimes, she knew they were still up there, waiting for clear nights to shine again. That sameness was comforting, like knowing the sun would rise in the morning. Beatrice's life was full of rhythms, kneading dough, tending the fire, sleeping at night, and the stars were part of that rhythm. They were like a quiet song, singing to her that the world was big and beautiful, and she was part of it. As she watched them twinkle, her worries would slip away, and her body would feel ready for sleep. The darkness of the night was like a friend to Beatrice. Today we might be scared of the dark with our bright lights and noisy world. But in Beatrice's village, the dark was normal. There were no electric lights to keep things bright, just candles or the oven's embers, and those were dim. The darkness was soft, like a blanket wrapping around the house. When Beatrice looked at the stars through the crack, the dark made them shine even brighter. It was like the night was holding her, saying, "Don't be afraid, just rest." Beatrice would close her eyes, still seeing the stars in her mind, and let the darkness carry her to sleep. Sometimes Beatrice would whisper to Thomas about the stars. If he was awake, she'd say, "Thomas, look at the sky tonight, it's so pretty." He'd grumble, half asleep, "Aye, Beatrice, the stars are nice," and they'd both smile. They'd lie there side by side, listening to the quiet night. Pip's soft snores would hum at the foot of the bed, and Muffin's purring would add a gentle buzz. The stars outside, twinkling through the crack, were like part of their family, making the bed feel even cozier. Beatrice loved sharing those moments with Thomas, like a little secret between them and the sky. The stars weren't the only thing Beatrice noticed at night. The village was full of soft sounds that mixed with the sight of the stars to make a perfect lullaby. The wind might rustle the straw roof, sounding like a soft whisper, An owl could hoot in the distance, its hoo-hoo low and gentle. The oven's embers might pop softly like tiny snaps. These sounds were quiet, like the stars' light was quiet, and they worked together to make Beatrice feel sleepy. She'd lie in bed, the straw crunching if she moved, and let the sounds and the stars wrap around her like a warm hug. On some nights the moon was bright, and its light would sneak through the crack in the shutter too. The moonlight was softer than the stars, like a pale glow that made the room feel calm. Beatrice would see it mixing with the starlight, and it was like the sky was painting a picture just for her. The moon and stars together made her feel like the night was alive, watching over the village while everyone slept. She'd think about how the same moon and stars shone on the fields, the stream, and the goats in their pens. It made her feel connected to everything, like she was part of a big, quiet world. Beatrice's bed was simple, but it was the perfect place to watch the stars. The straw mattress was lumpy, and the wool blanket was a little scratchy, but it was warm and cozy. Thomas's body next to her was like a heater, keeping her toasty. Pip's little snores and Muffin's purrs added to the comfort, like a soft song. The corner where the bed sat near the oven was warm from the day's fire, and the air smelled like bread and home. When Beatrice looked at the stars through the crack, all these things, the bed, her family, the warmth, made the moment feel special, like the stars were shining just for her. Sometimes Beatrice would think about the stars as she lay there. She didn't know much about them, no one in her village did. They didn't have telescopes or science books like we do, but she liked to imagine they were little lights made by someone kind, watching over the world. She'd think about how they twinkled, like they were winking at her, saying, "Sleep, Beatrice, sleep." Those thoughts were soft and happy, like a dream starting before she even fell asleep. The stars helped her let go of the day, making her mind quiet and ready for rest. The crack in the shutter was small, but it was enough to let the sky in. Beatrice didn't need a big window to feel the magic of the stars. That tiny sliver of light was like a gift, a little piece of the sky just for her. She'd stare at it, her eyes getting heavy, and feel like the stars were her friends. They didn't care if she'd burned a loaf of bread or if the dough didn't rise right. They just twinkled steady and kind, reminding her that tomorrow was a new day. That thought made her smile, and her yawns would come big and slow as sleep crept closer. Sometimes funny things happened while Beatrice watched the stars. Pip might snore extra loud like a little trumpet, and Beatrice would giggle, whispering, "Pip, you're louder than the wind." If Thomas heard, he'd chuckle, his voice sleepy, and say, "That dog could wake the stars." Other times, Muffin might climb onto the bed and sit right in front of Beatrice's face, blocking her view of the crack. Beatrice would laugh softly and move her, saying, "Muffin, I'm trying to see the sky." Those little moments made the night feel warm and happy, like the stars were part of her family's cozy world. The stars weren't always visible. Some nights clouds covered the sky and the crack in the shutter showed only darkness. But Beatrice didn't mind. She knew the stars were still there, hiding behind the clouds, waiting for another clear night. On those cloudy nights, she'd listen to the sounds of the village instead, the wind rustling, the embers popping, Pip's snores. Those sounds were like a different kind of lullaby, still gentle and soothing. Whether she saw the stars or not, Beatrice felt the night's calm, letting it hold her like a friend. The vastness of the sky made Beatrice feel small, but in a good way. She'd think about how big the world was, with stars stretching far beyond her village. It was like the sky was a giant blanket, covering everyone, her, Thomas, Pip, Muffin, the villagers, the goats, the fields. That thought made her feel safe, like she was part of something bigger. She didn't need to understand the sky or know why the stars twinkled. She just loved them, and they helped her relax, making her body feel heavy and her mind quiet. Beatrice's nights with the stars were part of her rhythm, like kneading dough or tending the fire. Her life was simple, with work during the day and rest at night. The stars were a little gift, a moment of beauty in her busy day. She'd lie in bed, the straw crunching, and watch them twinkle through the crack. The warmth of Thomas, the snores of Pip, the purrs of Muffin, they all mixed with the starlight, making her bed the coziest place in the world. She'd let out a soft sigh, her eyes closing, and feel the darkness hold her, like a gentle hand guiding her to sleep. Sometimes, Beatrice would wake up in the middle of the night, like she often did. Back then, people had segmented sleep, waking for a bit before sleeping again. During those midnight breaks, she'd peek at the stars through the crack, seeing them shine even brighter in the deep night. She might whisper to Thomas or just lie there, listening to the village sounds, the wind, an owl, the creak of the house. The stars were like a quiet friend, keeping her company until she was ready to sleep again. She'd snuggle under the blanket, the straw mattress shifting, and let the starlight carry her back to dreams. The stars made Beatrice's sleep special because they were a reminder of the world's beauty. Her days were full of work, kneading, baking, carrying wood, but the stars were a moment of peace. They didn't ask anything of her. They just twinkled, soft and steady, like a promise that everything was okay. Beatrice would watch them, her yawns growing bigger, and feel her body relax. The darkness of the night, the warmth of her bed, the sounds of her family, it all worked with the stars to make sleep come easily, like slipping into a warm, soft cloud. Beatrice's starry nights teach us something simple. You don't need a big window or a fancy bed to feel the magic of the night. A tiny crack in a shutter, a glimpse of twinkling lights is enough to make you feel calm. The stars are always there, even when clouds hide them, and they remind us to let go, to rest, to let the darkness be a friend. As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine her bed with its crunchy straw and warm blanket. Picture the stars shining through the crack, twinkling like little lights just for her. Let the quiet of her night, the softness of the sky, wrap around you like a lullaby, helping you feel sleepy and peaceful. Beatrice worked hard all day in her little bakery in a tiny village in medieval England a long, long time ago. She kneaded dough, hauled wood, and baked bread for everyone in the village. By evening, her arms were tired, her eyes were droopy, and she was ready to rest. Before climbing into her straw bed, Beatrice would eat a simple meal called pottage, a warm, thick soup made of barley, herbs, and maybe a bit of onion. It filled her belly with a cozy, heavy feeling that made her feel calm and ready for sleep. Sometimes she'd nibble on a crust of bread, still warm from the oven, its toasty smell mixing with the night air. Let's imagine Beatrice's bedtime meal, so simple and comforting, and let it make you feel cozy and sleepy too. Beatrice's house was small, made of mud and sticks, with a straw roof that kept out the rain. The bakery where she and her husband Thomas worked was part of the house, so the air always smelled like fresh bread and wood smoke. Their bed, a straw mattress with a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket, was tucked in a corner near the big stone oven, which stayed warm at night. After a long day, Beatrice would sit by the oven's low fire to eat her supper, the glow of the embers lighting her face. The meal wasn't fancy, but it was just right for helping her relax and drift off to sleep. Pottage was Beatrice's favorite bedtime meal. It was a kind of soup or stew, thick and hearty, that people ate a lot back then. To make it, Beatrice would use a big clay pot which she'd set over the fire. She'd pour in water and add barley, a grain that looks like little pearls. The barley would cook slowly, getting soft and chewy. She'd toss in some herbs like parsley or thyme, which grew in a patch outside the house. Sometimes she'd add a bit of onion, chopped into tiny pieces, to give the pottage a sweet, savory taste. The ingredients were simple, but they came together to make something warm and filling, like a hug for her tummy. Cooking pottage wasn't hard, but it took time. Beatrice would stir the pot with a wooden spoon, watching the barley bubble in the water. The fire's heat made the kitchen cozy, and the smell of the herbs and onion would fill the air. She didn't have a clock, but she knew the pottage was ready when it was thick and the barley was soft. She'd scoop it into a wooden bowl, careful not to burn her fingers, and sit on a stool by the fire. The bowl was warm in her hands, and the steam from the pottage would tickle her nose, making her smile. It was a simple meal, but it felt special, like a reward for her hard day. Beatrice would eat her pottage slowly, taking small spoonfuls. The barley was chewy, the herbs gave it a fresh taste, and the onion added a little sweetness. It wasn't spicy or fancy like some foods we eat today, no pizza or tacos for Beatrice, but it was just what she needed. The warm soup would slide down her throat, warming her from the inside out. It filled her belly with a heavy, cozy feeling, like when you eat a big bowl of oatmeal on a cold morning. That fullness made Beatrice feel calm, like her body was saying, "Okay, you're ready to rest now." Sometimes Beatrice would pair her pottage with a piece of bread. Since she was a baker's wife, there was always bread in the house. She'd break off a crust from a loaf baked that day, still warm from the oven. The bread was crusty on the outside, soft on the inside, and it smelled so good, like the bakery itself. She'd nibble on it, the crust crunching between her teeth, and dip it into the pottage. The bread would soak up the warm broth, making each bite extra tasty. Eating bread with pottage was like a little treat, something that made her bedtime meal even more comforting. The bread wasn't like the soft, fluffy bread we buy at the store. It was heavier, with a thick crust and a chewy middle. Sometimes it had bits of grain or seeds in it, which gave it a nutty taste. Beatrice loved it, especially when it was warm. She'd hold the crust in her hands, feeling its warmth, and take small bites, savoring the flavor. The bread and pottage together were the perfect pair, like peanut butter and jelly. They filled her up, made her feel cozy, and helped her body get ready for sleep. Beatrice didn't eat a lot before bed, just enough to feel satisfied. Back then, people didn't have big fridges full of snacks or fast food to grab. Their meals were simple, made from what they grew or had on hand. Pottage was easy to make, and the ingredients, barley, herbs, onions, were things Beatrice could get from the village or her own garden. She didn't need a big meal to feel full. The warm pottage and a bit of bread were enough to make her belly happy and her mind calm, like a gentle signal that the day was over. While Beatrice ate, the bakery was quiet. The village outside was dark, with only the moon and stars for light. She could hear soft sounds, like the wind rustling the straw roof or a goat bleating far away. Inside, the oven's embers popped softly, and the fire's glow made the room feel warm and safe. Thomas might be sitting with her, eating his own bowl of pottage, or he might already be in bed, his breathing slow and steady. Their dog, Pip, would be curled up near the oven, hopping for a crumb, and their cat, Muffin, might be purring on a shelf. The quiet and the warmth made Beatrice's meal feel like a special moment, a peaceful end to her day. Eating by the fire was cozy, but it wasn't fancy. Beatrice didn't have a big table or pretty plates. She sat on a simple wooden stool, her bowl in her lap, and ate with a wooden spoon. The bowl was plain, maybe a little chipped, but it did its job. The firelight danced on the walls, making shadows that moved like soft waves. Beatrice would take her time, enjoying each bite, feeling the warmth of the pottage and the bread. It was a simple routine, but it was hers, and it made her feel ready for bed. Sometimes Beatrice and Thomas would talk while they ate. They'd share little stories about the day, like how a kid dropped his bread and laughed, or how Pip got flour on his nose. Their voices were soft, blending with the crackle of the fire and the rustle of the wind. Talking made the meal feel like a family moment, even if it was just the two of them. Pip might wag his tail, hopping for a bit of crust, and Beatrice would laugh and say, "Oh, Pip, you're always hungry." Those moments were small, but they filled Beatrice's heart, making her bedtime meal even more special. The pottage wasn't always the same. Some days Beatrice might add different herbs like mint or sage to change the flavor. If they had a good harvest, she might toss in a bit of carrot or leek, making the pottage extra tasty. But even when it was just barley and herbs, it was enough. Beatrice didn't need a lot to feel satisfied. The simplicity of the meal was part of what made it so comforting. It was like her life: hard work, simple joys, and cozy rest. The pottage was a reminder that she didn't need fancy things to be happy. Sometimes Beatrice would eat alone if Thomas was already asleep or still cleaning the bakery. She didn't mind. The quiet was nice and the fire's glow kept her company. She'd listen to the sounds of the night, the wind, the embers, maybe an owl hooting outside. Pip might snuggle closer, his big eyes watching her spoon, and Muffin's purrs would hum in the background. Eating alone gave Beatrice a moment to think about her day, to feel proud of the bread she made and the smiles she saw. Those thoughts were soft and happy, like a warm blanket for her mind, helping her get ready for sleep. The warm pottage had a special way of making Beatrice feel sleepy. It wasn't just that it filled her belly, it was the warmth, the cozy weight that settled inside her. After a long day of standing, kneading, and carrying, her body was tired and the pottage was like a signal to slow down. She'd finish her bowl, maybe licking the spoon, and feel her eyes get heavy. Her yawns would come big and slow, like her body was saying, "Time for bed." The bread's crusty bite added to that feeling, its toasty flavor lingering in her mouth as she got ready to rest. Beatrice didn't eat anything heavy or sugary before bed, like we might with ice cream or cookies. Her pottage and bread were plain, but they were perfect for sleep. They didn't make her feel too full or keep her awake. Instead, they made her feel just right, satisfied, warm, and calm. The meal was like a bridge between her busy day and her quiet night, helping her move from work to rest. She'd set her bowl down, wipe her hands on her apron, and feel ready to climb into bed. After eating, Beatrice had a little routine to get ready for bed. She'd wash her hands in a bucket of cold water, shaking off the flour from her day's work. She'd fold her apron and set it on a stool, ready for the morning. She'd check the fire, making sure the embers were low and safe for the night. Then she'd walk to her bed, her feet soft on the dirt floor, and climb in. The straw mattress would crunch as she lay down, and she'd pull the wool blanket up, feeling its heavy warmth. Thomas would be there, his breathing slow, and Pip and Muffin would add their snores and purrs. The pottage's cozy weight in her belly would help her relax, like a gentle push towards sleep. Sometimes funny things happened while Beatrice ate her pottage. Pip might get too close, sniffing the bowl, and she'd laugh, saying, "Pip, this isn't for dogs." She'd toss him a tiny crumb of bread and he'd gobble it up, his tail wagging. Other times, Muffin would jump onto the stool next to her, her eyes big and hopeful. Beatrice would pet her and say, "Muffin, you're such a beggar." Those little moments made her meal feel warm and happy, like her animals were part of the family supper. They added a bit of fun to the quiet night, making Beatrice smile as she ate. The pottage and bread were more than just food, they were part of Beatrice's life. Her days were full of work, but they were also full of love and simple joys. The meal was a moment to slow down, to feel the warmth of the fire and the comfort of her home. It was a time to be with Thomas, to laugh with Pip and Muffin, to think about the day. The pottage's warmth, the bread's toasty crust, they were like a promise that rest was coming, that sleep would be soft and deep. Beatrice didn't need a big feast to feel happy. Her simple supper was enough. Sometimes, Beatrice would think about her meal as she lay in bed. She'd remember the taste of the pottage, the chewy barley, the fresh herbs. She'd think about the bread, how the crust crunched and the inside was soft. Those thoughts were comforting, like a memory of home. They mixed with the sounds of the night, the wind rustling, the embers popping, Pip's snores, and helped her drift off. The pottage's cozy weight stayed with her, like a gentle hand patting her, saying, "Sleep now, you're safe." Beatrice's bedtime meal teaches us something simple. You don't need fancy food to feel cozy and ready for sleep. A warm, plain meal like pottage and bread can be just right. It fills your belly, warms your body, and calms your mind. Beatrice's supper was part of her quiet night, a moment to rest before bed. As you listen to her story, imagine her sitting by the fire, eating her pottage, nibbling her bread. Picture the glow of the embers, the smell of herbs, the crunch of the crust. Let the coziness of her meal wrap around you, like a warm blanket, helping you feel sleepy and peaceful. Beatrice and her husband, Thomas, lived in a tiny village in medieval England, a long, long time ago. Their small house made of mud and sticks with a straw roof was also their bakery, where they worked hard all day making bread for the village. By evening, Beatrice was tired from kneading dough and hauling wood, and Thomas was tired too, his strong hands sore from shaping loaves. Before they climbed into their cozy straw bed, Thomas had one last job. He would bank the fire in the big stone oven. This meant piling ashes over the glowing embers to keep them alive until morning. As he did this, the fire's bright glow would fade and the room would grow dim and quiet. That fading light was like a signal to Beatrice and Thomas, time to sleep, time to rest. Let's imagine this quiet moment with the fire's final flicker and let it make you feel calm and sleepy too. The bakery was the heart of Beatrice and Thomas's home. It was one big room with a dirt floor, mud walls, and a wooden table where they mixed dough. The oven, made of heavy stones, sat in a corner, and it was the most important part of the bakery. During the day, it roared with flames to bake the bread, filling the room with heat and the yummy smell of crusty loaves. But at night, the fire needed to rest, just like Beatrice and Thomas. They couldn't let it go out completely, though, because starting a new fire in the morning was hard work. So Thomas would bank the fire, a simple trick to keep the embers alive until dawn. Banking the fire was a careful job. Thomas would take a wooden shovel or a long stick and scoop ashes from the edge of the oven. The ashes were gray and powdery like soft dust, and they were still warm from the day's fire. He'd pile them gently over the embers, which were the glowing, red-hot bits of wood left after the flames died down. The embers looked like tiny, shiny jewels glowing in the dark oven. By covering them with ashes, Thomas was tucking them in, like putting a blanket over a sleeping baby. The ashes kept the embers warm and safe, stopping them from burning out or flaring up into big flames. As Thomas piled on the ashes, the fire's glow would get softer and softer. During the day, the oven was bright, with orange and yellow flames dancing inside. But now, as the ashes covered the embers, the light faded to a dull red, then a faint glow like the last bit of sunset. The room, which had been warm and bright, grew dim and shadowy. The wooden table, the shelves, and the sacks of flour all became dark shapes, barely visible. Beatrice, sitting on a stool or already in bed, would watch the light fade, her eyes getting heavy. That dimming glow was like the world saying, "SHH, it's time to sleep." The fatting fire made the bakery feel different. During the day, it was a busy place, full of heat, flour, and the sound of Beatrice and Thomas working. But at night, with the fire banked, it was quiet and calm, like a cozy cave. The air was still warm from the oven, but it wasn't hot anymore, just a gentle, toasty feeling that made the room snug. Beatrice loved this moment. It was like the bakery was resting with her, getting ready for the night. The dim light and soft warmth were perfect for making her feel sleepy, like a hug from her home. Thomas was good at banking the fire. He'd done it so many times, his hands knew just what to do. He'd move slowly, careful not to stir up too much ash or let the embers flare up. Sometimes a little spark would pop out like a tiny star, and Thomas would smile watching it fade. He scooped more ashes, piling them high until the embers were completely covered. The oven would still give off a soft heat, but the bright light was gone, leaving just a faint glow that barely reached the walls. Thomas would brush his hands on his apron, leaving gray smudges, and nod, satisfied that the fire would last until morning. Beatrice would often sit nearby while Thomas worked, her bowl of pottage empty from supper. She'd eaten her simple meal of barley, herbs, and maybe a bit of onion, and her belly was full and cozy. Sometimes she'd nibble on a crust of bread, still warm from the oven, its toasty smell mixing with the smoky air. As Thomas banked the fire, Beatrice would watch, her yawns growing bigger. The fatting light was like a signal to her body. The day was over and sleep was coming. She'd feel her arms, tired from kneading, and her legs, heavy from standing, start to relax. The dim room and the soft warmth were like a gentle push toward her bed. The bed was in a corner near the oven, a simple straw mattress with a rough sheet and a wool blanket. It was cozy, especially with Thomas beside her, their little dog Pip curled up at their feet, and their cat Muffin purring nearby. As the fire's glow faded, Beatrice would climb into bed, the straw crunching under her. She'd pull the blanket up, feeling its heavy warmth, and snuggle close to Thomas. The room was dark now, with just a tiny bit of light from the banked embers. That darkness was soothing, like a soft blanket over the world, telling Beatrice it was time to rest. The sounds of the night mixed with the fatting fire to make a perfect lullaby. Outside, the village was quiet, with only soft noises like the wind rustling the straw roof or a goat bleating far away. An owl might hoot its hoo-hoo gentle and low. Inside, the oven's embers would pop now and then, a tiny snap that was barely there. Thomas's breathing, slow and steady, would start as he fell asleep, and Pip's little snores would hum at the foot of the bed. Muffin's purrs, soft and warm, added to the cozy feeling. These sounds, along with the dimming fire, were like a song, wrapping Beatrice in calm and helping her drift off. Banking the fire wasn't just about keeping the embers alive. It was part of Beatrice and Thomas's routine, like a bedtime story for their house. Every night Thomas would do this job, and every night the room would grow dim, signaling the end of the day. Beatrice loved that sameness. Her life was full of rhythms, mixing dough, baking bread, eating pottage, sleeping, and the fire's final flicker was a big part of it. It was like the last note in a song, telling her the day was done and sleep was here. Sometimes funny things happened while Thomas banked the fire. Pip might get too close to the oven, sniffing the ashes, and sneeze, his little nose covered in gray dust. Beatrice would laugh, saying, "Pip, you silly dog, stay away." Thomas would chuckle, brushing the ash off Pip's fur. Other times, Muffin would jump onto the table, watching Thomas work, her big eyes glowing in the dim light. Beatrice would say, "Muffin, you're so nosy," and shoo her away, smiling. These little moments made the night feel warm and happy, like the fire's glow was part of their family. The bank fire was important because it meant the bakery would be ready in the morning. When Beatrice and Thomas woke up, they'd uncover the embers, add new wood, and start the fire again. The embers, kept alive under the ashes, made it easy to get the oven hot for baking. Without banking the fire, they'd have to start from scratch, striking a flint to make a spark, which was hard and took time. Thomas's careful work at night saved them effort in the morning, letting them focus on making bread. Beatrice was grateful for that, and she'd smile as she watched him, knowing he was taking care of their home. As the fire's glow faded, the room felt different. The shadows grew longer and the air felt cooler, though still warm from the oven. Beatrice would take a deep breath, smelling the wood smoke and the faint scent of bread. That smell was comforting, like a memory of her day's work. She'd think about the loaves she baked, the kids who ran to the bakery for bread, and the quiet village outside. Those thoughts were soft and happy, like a gentle wave carrying her towards sleep. The dim light and the cozy smells made her feel safe, like the world was resting with her. Sometimes Beatrice would talk to Thomas as he banked the fire. She'd say, "Thomas, you're so good at that," and he'd grin, his face lit by the fatting glow. They'd share little stories about the day, like how a loaf came out extra crusty or how a neighbor thanked them for the bread. Their voices were soft, blending with the pop of the embers and the rustle of the wind. Talking made the moment feel special, like a quiet goodbye to the day. It might wag his tail, listening, and Muffin's purrs would add to the cozy feeling. These small talks were like a warm drink, soothing Beatrice before bed. The fire's final flicker was a signal for the whole house to sleep. Beatrice and Thomas would settle into bed, the straw crunching as they moved. Hip would curl up, his snores starting right away, and Muffin would find her spot, purring softly. The village outside was dark, with only the moon and stars for light. The bank fire meant no more work, no more tasks, just rest. Beatrice would close her eyes, the last bit of the fire's glow fading in her mind, and feel her body relax. The darkness, the warmth, the sounds, they all worked together to make sleep come easily, like slipping into a soft, warm cloud. The act of banking the fire was simple, but it was full of meaning. It was Thomas's way of caring for the bakery, making sure it was ready for the next day. It was a promise that the work they loved would continue. For Beatrice, it was a moment of calm, a chance to let go of the day. She didn't need to think about tomorrow's dough or the wood pile. The fatting fire told her it was okay to rest, to let the night take over. She'd yawn, her eyes heavy, and feel the cozy weight of her pottage-filled belly, the warmth of Thomas beside her, and the softness of the darkness. Sometimes, Beatrice would wake up in the middle of the night like many people did back then. They called it segmented sleep, waking for a bit before sleeping again. During those midnight breaks, she'd see the faint glow of the banked embers, just a tiny light in the oven. It was comforting, like a reminder that the fire was still there, waiting for morning. She might whisper to Thomas or listen to the night, the wind and owl, Pip's snores. The banked fire was part of that quiet moment, a steady presence that made her feel safe. She'd snuggle back under the blanket, the straw shifting, and drift off again, the fire's glow in her mind. The fire's final flicker was a small thing, but it was a big part of Beatrice's night. It marked the end of her day, the start of her rest. It was a moment of peace in her busy life, a chance to be still and let sleep come. The bakery, with its dim light and soft sounds, was her home, and the banked fire was like a heartbeat, keeping it alive. Beatrice would lie in bed, her family close, and feel the world slow down. The fatting glow, the cozy warmth, the gentle snores, they were her lullaby, helping her sleep deeply and peacefully. Beatrice's night teaches us something simple. A small act like banking a fire can be a big part of feeling calm and ready for sleep. The fatting light, the quiet room, the warmth of home, they all work together to make rest feel special. As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine the fire's final flicker, the glow fatting in the oven. Picture her bed with its crunchy straw and warm blanket, and hear the soft sounds of the night. Let the coziness of her world wrap around you, like a gentle hug, helping you feel sleepy and calm. Beatrice lived in a tiny village in medieval England a long, long time ago, where life was simple but full of hard work. She spent her days in the bakery, which was part of her small house made of mud and sticks with a straw roof. She kneaded dough, hauled wood, and baked bread for the whole village, and by evening her body was tired and her eyes were heavy. Before climbing into her cozy straw bed, Beatrice had a few special tasks she did every night. She folded her apron, checked the dough for the morning, and latched the wooden door. These small acts were like a quiet prayer, a way to tell the day it was done and get ready for sleep. Her movements were slow and careful, helping her feel calm and sleepy. Let's imagine Beatrice's bedtime rituals, so gentle and simple, and let them make you feel cozy and ready to rest too. Beatrice's house was small and warm, with a dirt floor and a big stone oven that kept the bakery toasty. The bed she shared with her husband, Thomas, was in a corner near the oven, a straw mattress with a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket. Their little dog Pip would curl up at their feet, and their cat Muffin would purr nearby. By the time evening came, the bakery was quiet, and the fire in the oven was low, just glowing embers under a pile of ashes. Beatrice's day was full of work, but these last tasks, her bedtime rituals, were like a soft goodbye to the day, making her feel peaceful and ready for bed. The first ritual was folding her apron. Beatrice wore a simple apron every day to keep her clothes clean from flour and dough. It was made of rough cloth tied around her waist, and by the end of the day it was covered in white flour smudges and maybe a few crumbs. Before bed, she'd untie the apron, feeling the weight of the day slip off with it. She'd hold it in her hands, shaking off loose flour so it puffed into the air like a tiny cloud. Then she'd fold it carefully, smoothing the cloth with her fingers, and place it on a wooden stool near the table. Folding the apron was like saying, "The baking is done for today." It was a small act, but it made her feel calm, like she was closing a book after a long story. Beatrice moved slowly as she folded the apron, her hands steady and gentle. She didn't rush, even though she was tired. Her fingers would trace the edges of the cloth, making neat folds, and she'd smile a little, thinking about the bread she made that day. The bakery was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the oven's embers, and the air smelled of bread and wood smoke. The quiet of the room and the soft light made this moment feel special, like a secret between Beatrice and her home. Folding the apron was her way of telling herself that her work was finished, and now she could rest. The next ritual was checking the dough for the morning. Beatrice always prepared dough at night so it could rise slowly while she slept. The dough was in big wooden bowls, covered with clean cloths to keep it safe from dust or curious cats like Muffin. She'd walk to the table, her feet soft on the dirt floor, and lift the cloth on one bowl. The dough was soft and puffy, smelling yeasty and fresh, like the promise of tomorrow's bread. Beatrice would press her finger gently into it, feeling how squishy it was. If it sprang back slowly, it was perfect. If it needed more time, she'd pat it gently, like tucking in a child, and cover it again. Checking the dough was important because it meant the bakery would be ready when Beatrice woke up. She didn't want to start the morning with bad dough. That would mean extra work. By making sure it was rising nicely, she could go to bed knowing everything was set for tomorrow. This task was like a little gift to her future self, a way to make the morning easier. Beatrice would check each bowl, moving slowly from one to the next, her hands careful and sure. The bakery was so quiet, with only the soft pop of the embers or the rustle of the straw roof outside. That stillness made checking the dough feel like a calm, sleepy moment, helping her mind get ready for rest. Sometimes, while checking the dough, Beatrice would hum a little tune, soft and slow like a lullaby. It wasn't a fancy song, just a few notes that made her feel happy. The sound of her humming mixed with the quiet of the bakery, creating a peaceful feeling. Pip might lift his head, his big eyes watching her, hopping for a crumb. Beatrice would smile and say, "Not now, Pip, it's bedtime." Muffin might stretch on her shelf, purring softly, adding to the cozy mood. These little moments, humming, checking the dough, talking to her animals, were part of Beatrice's ritual, making her feel connected to her home. The last ritual was latching the door. Beatrice's house had a simple wooden door, heavy and creaky, that kept out the cold and kept the family safe. At night, she'd walk to the door, her footsteps light, and slide a wooden latch across it. The latch was a thick piece of wood that fit into a slot, locking the door tight. It made a soft thud when it slid into place, a sound that Beatrice loved. That thud was like the final word of the day, saying, "The house is safe, you can sleep now." She rested her hand on the door for a moment, feeling the rough wood, and take a deep breath, letting the day go. Latching the door was important because it made Beatrice feel secure. The village was small and friendly, but at night the world outside could feel big and dark. There might be animals like foxes or wolves, or maybe just the wind, which could sound spooky. The latch door kept all that outside, so Beatrice, Thomas, Pip, and Muffin could rest without worry. Beatrice would check the latch twice just to be sure, sliding it back and forth to make sure it held. Then she'd nod, satisfied, and turn back to the dim bakery, ready for bed. These rituals, folding the apron, checking the dough, latching the door, were like a prayer for Beatrice, but not the kind with words or kneeling. They were a quiet way to tell the day it was over, to thank her home for keeping her safe, and to get her body and mind ready for sleep. Each task was small, but together they made a big difference. They helped Beatrice slow down, like when you take deep breaths to calm yourself. Her movements were deliberate, meaning she did them carefully, thinking about each one, not rushing or being sloppy. This slowness was part of what made the rituals so soothing, like a gentle song that carried her to bed. As Beatrice did her rituals, the bakery felt like a cozy, safe place. The fire in the oven was banked, covered with ashes by Thomas to keep the embers alive until morning, so the room was dim with just a faint red glow. The air was warm, smelling of bread, wood smoke, and maybe a hint of the pottage Beatrice ate for supper. Outside, the village was dark and quiet, with soft sounds like the wind rustling the straw roof, an owl hooting, or a goat bleating far away. These sounds mixed with the quiet of the bakery, creating a peaceful feeling that wrapped around Beatrice like a soft blanket. Sometimes, Thomas would help with the bedtime rituals. He might check the dough with Beatrice, lifting the cloth and poking the dough to see if it was ready. They'd talk softly, their voices low, about how the dough looked or what kind of bread they'd make tomorrow. Other times, Thomas would latch the door, his strong hands sliding the wooden bar into place with a thud. Beatrice would watch him, smiling, grateful for his help. They were a team, and doing these tasks together made the night feel even cozier, like they were wrapping up the day as a family. Pip and Muffin were part of the rituals too, in their own way. Pip would follow Beatrice as she moved around the bakery, his little tail wagging, hopping for a pat or a crumb. When she folded her apron, he might sniff it, looking for bits of dough. Beatrice would laugh and say, "Pip, you're so nosy." Muffin would watch from her shelf, her eyes glowing in the dim light, or she'd jump down and rub against Beatrice's legs, purring. These little moments with her animals made the rituals feel warm and happy, like Beatrice wasn't alone in her quiet tasks. Sometimes funny things happened during Beatrice's rituals. Once while checking the dough, Beatrice lifted the cloth and found Muffin sitting on top of it, her paws sunk into the soft dough. Beatrice giggled, saying, "Muffin, you naughty cat," and gently shooed her away, smoothing the dough back into shape. Another time, Pip got under her feet as she walked to the door and she almost tripped. She laughed, petting him, and said, "Pip, you're always in the way." These silly moments made her smile, adding a bit of fun to her bedtime tasks and making the night feel light and joyful. The rituals were simple, but they were special because they were Beatrice's way of saying goodbye to the day. Folding the apron meant her baking was done. Checking the dough meant tomorrow was ready. Latching the door meant her home was safe. Each task was like a step towards sleep, helping her body and mind slow down. Beatrice didn't think about them as big deals. She just did them night after night like a habit. But those habits were like a warm drink or a soft song, making her feel calm and ready for her straw bed. As Beatrice finished her rituals, she'd take one last look around the bakery. The table was clean, the dough was covered, the fire was banked, and the door was latched. Everything was in its place, ready for the night. She'd feel a little proud, knowing her hard work had fed the village and her home was set for tomorrow. The dim light from the embers, the smell of bread, the soft sounds of Pip's snores and Muffin's purrs, they all made the bakery feel like a cozy nest. Beatrice would yawn, her eyes heavy, and head to bed, her heart full and her body tired. Climbing into bed was the final part of Beatrice's night. The straw mattress would crunch as she lay down, and she'd pull the wool blanket up, feeling its weight. Thomas would be there, his breathing slow and steady, and Pip would curl up, his little body warm at her feet. Muffin might jump up, purring softly, finding a spot on the blanket. The bakery was dark now, with just a faint glow from the bank fire. The rituals had done their job. Beatrice felt calm, safe, and ready to sleep. She'd close her eyes, the day's work behind her, and let the quiet night carry her away. Sometimes, Beatrice would think about her rituals as she lay in bed. She'd remember the feel of the apron in her hands, the squishy dough under her finger, the thud of the latch. Those memories were comforting, like a reminder that her home was in order. They mixed with the sounds of the night, the wind outside, the pop of the embers, Thomas's breathing, and helped her drift off. The rituals were like a bridge between her busy day and her quiet sleep, making the transition soft and easy. Beatrice's rituals weren't just about getting things done. They were about feeling peaceful, about making her home a safe, cozy place to rest. Folding the apron, checking the dough, latching the door, they were small acts of love for her work, her family, and her life. They helped her let go of the day like blowing out a candle after a long evening. Beatrice didn't need fancy things to feel ready for sleep. Her simple tasks done with care were enough to make her bed feel like the best place in the world. Beatrice's bedtime rituals teach us something simple. Little tasks done slowly and carefully can make you feel calm and ready for rest. You don't need big things to end the day, just small acts that say, "I'm done, it's time to sleep." As you listen to Beatrice's story, imagine her folding her apron, checking her dough, latching her door. Picture the dim bakery, the glow of the embers, the quiet of the night. Let the gentleness of her rituals wrap around you, like a soft lullaby, helping you feel sleepy and peaceful. Beatrice lived in a tiny village in medieval England, a long, long time ago, where life was simple and full of hard work. She spent her days in the bakery, which was part of her small house made of mud and sticks with a straw roof. She kneaded dough, hauled wood, and baked bread for the whole village, and by evening her arms were tired and her eyes were droopy. Before climbing into her cozy straw bed, Beatrice had one last thing to do. She would say a few soft words to her husband, Thomas. "Good night, Thomas," she'd whisper, or maybe just, "Tomorrow, then." Her voice was gentle, barely louder than the wind rustling outside. Those words were like a quiet hug, enough to close the day and make her feel ready for sleep. Let's imagine Beatrice's final words, so soft and simple, and let them make you feel calm and sleepy too. Beatrice's house was small and warm, with a dirt floor and a big stone oven that kept the bakery toasty. The bed she shared with Thomas was in a corner near the oven, a straw mattress with a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket. Their little dog Pip would curl up at their feet, snoring softly, and their cat Muffin would purr nearby, adding a gentle hum to the night. By evening, the bakery was quiet, the fire in the oven banked with ashes to keep the embers alive until morning. The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of those embers, and the air smelled of fresh bread and wood smoke. This was the perfect time for Beatrice to say her final words, a small ritual that helped her end the day. After a long day of work, Beatrice would finish her bedtime tasks, folding her flour-dusted apron, checking the dough for the morning, and latching the wooden door. These acts were like a quiet way to tell the day it was done. Then she'd climb into bed, the straw mattress crunching under her as she settled in. Thomas would already be there, his strong body warm beside her, his breathing slow and steady. The bakery was dark and peaceful, with only soft sounds like the wind outside, the pop of the oven's embers, or Pip's tiny snores. In this calm moment, Beatrice would turn to Thomas and whisper her final words, a gentle way to say goodbye to the day. "Good night, Thomas," was her favorite thing to say. Her voice was soft, like a feather floating in the air, so quiet it blended with the rustle of the straw roof. She didn't need to be loud, Thomas was right there, close enough to feel her breath. Those two words were simple, but they meant a lot. They were like a promise that the day was over, that they'd done their work and now they could rest. Beatrice would say them with a little smile, her eyes half closed, feeling the cozy weight of the wool blanket and the warmth of Thomas beside her. It was like a tiny gift, a way to share love before sleep. Sometimes Beatrice would say something different, like, "Tomorrow then." This was shorter, but just as sweet. It was like saying, "We'll see each other in the morning and we'll do it all again." Her voice was still soft, barely louder than the wind whistling through the village. Those words were a nod to their life together, working in the bakery, baking bread, caring for their home. They made Beatrice feel connected to Thomas, like they were a team, ready to face another day after a good night's sleep. She'd whisper them, her head sinking into the straw mattress, and feel her body relax, ready for the night. Saying these words was a ritual for Beatrice, like folding her apron or latching the door. It was a small act, but it felt big because it marked the end of the day. The bakery was quiet, the village was dark, and the world outside was still, with only gentle sounds like an owl hooting or a goat bleating far away. Beatrice's words were part of that quiet, like the last note in a soft song. They helped her let go of the day's work, kneading dough, tending the fire, giving bread to the village kids. Her whisper was like a signal to her mind and body. No more tasks, just sleep. Beatrice didn't always say the same thing. Some nights, if she was extra tired, she might just murmur, "Night, love," her voice so soft it was almost a sigh. Other times, if something funny happened that day, she might giggle and say, "Sleep well, you flower-dusted bear," teasing Thomas about the flower in his beard. Thomas would chuckle, his laugh low and sleepy, and maybe reply, "Good night, my busy bee." Their words were like a little dance, a way to share a smile before closing their eyes. No matter what she said, Beatrice's voice was always gentle, wrapping the bakery in a cozy, loving feeling. The bakery was the perfect place for these final words. The dim light from the bank fire made the room feel like a warm cave, safe and snug. The smell of bread lingered, mixing with the smoky scent of the oven, creating a comforting air that made Beatrice feel at home. Pip's snores and Muffin's purrs added a soft background hum like a lullaby that never stopped. The straw mattress, though lumpy, was cozy with Thomas's warmth and the heavy blanket. In this quiet, familiar space, Beatrice's whispered words felt like magic, turning the busy day into a peaceful night. Sometimes Thomas would already be asleep when Beatrice climbed into bed. His breathing would be deep and slow, like waves on a calm lake. She'd whisper her words anyway, knowing he might hear them in his dreams. "Good night, Thomas," she'd say, her voice soft as a breeze, and she'd smile, imagining him dreaming of bread or their little bakery. Even if he didn't reply, she felt closer to him, like her words were a hug that reached him through sleep. She'd settle in, the straw crunching, and let the quiet of the night carry her away. Other times, Thomas would be awake and they'd share a few words before sleep. Beatrice might say, "Tomorrow then," and Thomas would mumble, "Aye, more bread to bake." They'd laugh softly, their voices blending with the night sounds. They might talk about the day for a moment, like how Pip chased a mouse or how a kid thanked them for bread. These talks were short, just a few words, but they made the night feel warm and happy. Beatrice loved these moments, like a little gift before sleep, making her heart feel full as she closed her eyes. Final words weren't just for Thomas, they were for Beatrice too. Saying them helped her feel like the day was really over. Her work was done, the dough was ready, the door was latched, and the fire was banked. Her whisper was like a way to tell herself, "You did enough, now rest." It was a small act, but it was powerful, like blowing out a candle or turning off a light. Beatrice would say her words, feel her yawns come, and sink into the straw mattress, ready for sleep to wrap her up like a soft cloud. The village outside was dark and quiet, adding to the peace of Beatrice's words. There were no bright lights or loud noises like we have today, no cars, no TVs, no phones buzzing. The only sounds were gentle ones, the wind rustling the straw roof, an owl hooting in the distance, or the soft bleat of a goat. These sounds were like a blanket, wrapping the village in calm. Beatrice's whisper fit right in, so soft it was part of the night's song. It made the bakery feel like a safe, cozy nest, where she and Thomas could rest without worry. Sometimes funny things happened when Beatrice said her final words. Once she whispered, "Good night, Thomas," and Pip let out a loud snore like a little trumpet. Beatrice giggled, saying, "Pip, you're louder than me." Thomas laughed, his voice sleepy, and said, "That dog dreams too big." Another time, Muffin jumped onto the bed just as Beatrice spoke, landing on Thomas's chest with a soft thud. Beatrice whispered, "Tomorrow then," and added, "If Muffin lets us sleep." They chuckled, petting Muffin, and settled back into the quiet. These little moments made the night feel light and joyful, like Beatrice's words were part of a happy family. Beatrice's words were simple, but they were full of love. "Good night, Thomas," or "Tomorrow then," weren't just words, they were a way to share her heart. They showed Thomas she cared, even after a long, tiring day. They were a reminder that they were a team, working together in the bakery and resting together at night. Beatrice didn't need to say a lot to show her feelings. Her soft whisper in the dim, cozy bakery was enough to make Thomas feel loved and to make her feel ready for sleep. The act of saying these words was like a ritual, something Beatrice did every night, like folding her apron or checking the dough. It was part of her rhythm, a way to mark the end of the day. Her life was full of these small habits, mixing dough, tending the fire, latching the door, and the final words were one of the sweetest. They were like the last brushstroke on a painting, finishing the day with care. Beatrice would say them, her voice fading into the quiet, and feel her body relax, her mind calm, knowing sleep was near. Sometimes Beatrice would think about her words as she drifted off. She'd remember the sound of her own voice, so soft and gentle, and the way Thomas's breathing answered her. She'd picture his face, maybe smiling in the dark, and feel happy knowing he was there. Those thoughts were like a warm drink, soothing her as she sank into sleep. The bakery smells, bread, wood smoke, flour, mixed with the sounds of Pip's snores and Muffin's purrs, creating a cozy world where her words felt like a perfect ending. The final words were special because they were shared in the quiet of the night. The bakery was dark, with only the faint glow of the embers. The village was still, wrapped in darkness, with stars twinkling outside. Beatrice's whisper was part of that stillness, like a drop of water in a calm pond. It didn't need to be loud or fancy, it just needed to be there, a small act of love that closed the day. Beatrice would say her words, feel her yawns grow, and let the night take over, her body sinking into the straw mattress. Sometimes Beatrice and Thomas would say more than a few words. If they were both awake, they might share a little story. Beatrice might whisper, "That kid Tommy ran so fast with his bread today," and Thomas would reply, "Aye, he's quicker than Pip." They'd laugh softly, their voices barely louder than the wind. These talks were short, just a moment to connect before sleep. They made the night feel warm, like the bakery was a little world just for them, Pip and Muffin. Beatrice loved these quiet chats, like a cozy blanket for her heart. The final words weren't always spoken out loud. Some nights Beatrice was so tired she'd just think them, her lips moving silently. "Good night, Thomas," she'd say in her mind, her eyes already closing. Even without sound, the words mattered. They were a way to end the day with love. She'd feel Thomas's warmth beside her, hear Pip's snores, and know Muffin was nearby, purring. The silent words were like a secret prayer, a quiet thank you for her family and her home, helping her slip into sleep. Bakery was the perfect place for these words because it was Beatrice's world. The dim light, the warm air, the familiar smells, they all made her feel safe and cozy. The straw mattress, though lumpy, was her place to rest, and Thomas, Pip, and Muffin were her family, making it even better. Saying her final words in this space was like planting a seed of peace, something that grew into a deep, restful sleep. Beatrice didn't need a big house or fancy things. Her small bakery and her soft words were enough. Sometimes, Beatrice would wake up in the middle of the night, like people often did back then. They called it segmented sleep, waking for a bit before sleeping again. During those quiet moments, she might think about her final words, smiling in the dark. She'd listen to Thomas's breathing, Pip's snores, and Muffin's purrs, and feel the same calm her words brought. The bakery was dark, with just a faint glow from the banked fire, and the village outside was still. Those midnight breaks were like an echo of her final words, a reminder that the night was for rest and sleep would come again. Beatrice's final words teach us something simple. A few soft words said with love can be a perfect way to end the day. They don't need to be loud or long, just enough to say, "I'm here and I'm ready to rest." Beatrice's whispers in her cozy bakery were like a gentle lullaby, helping her and Thomas feel close and calm. As you listen to her story, imagine her whispering, "Good night, Thomas," or "Tomorrow then." Picture the dim bakery, the crunchy straw bed, the soft sounds of the night. Let the sweetness of her final words wrap around you, like a warm hug, helping you feel sleepy and peaceful. Beatrice lived in a tiny village in medieval England, a long, long time ago, where life was simple but full of hard work. She spent her days in the bakery, which was part of her small house made of mud and sticks with a straw roof. She kneaded dough, hauled wood, and baked bread for the whole village, and by evening her arms were tired and her eyes were droopy. At night, when she climbed into her cozy straw bed, Beatrice would fall asleep and dream. She believed dreams were special, like messages from a faraway place. A dream of bread rising might mean good luck was coming, while a dream of rain might warn of trouble ahead. She'd think about her dreams quietly, letting them fade as her sleep grew deeper. Let's imagine Beatrice's dreams, so soft and meaningful, and let them make you feel calm and sleepy too. Beatrice's house was small and warm, with a dirt floor and a big stone oven that kept the bakery toasty. The bed she shared with her husband Thomas was in a corner near the oven, a straw mattress with a rough cloth sheet and a heavy wool blanket. Their little dog Pip would curl up at their feet, snoring softly, and their cat Muffin would purr nearby, adding a gentle hum to the night. The bakery was quiet at night, the fire in the oven banked with ashes to keep the embers alive until morning. The room was dim with just a faint glow from the embers, and the air smelled of fresh bread and wood smoke. This was the perfect place for Beatrice to dream, her mind drifting into a world of soft, secret messages. Back then, people like Beatrice thought dreams were important. They didn't have books or scientists to explain dreams like we do today. Instead, they believed dreams could tell them things about their life, like little hints from the world beyond. Beatrice learned this from her family and the village elders, who shared stories about dreams and what they meant. If she dreamed of something good, like bread rising high and golden, she'd wake up smiling, thinking it meant good fortune, like a successful day at the bakery or a happy moment with Thomas. If she dreamed of something worrying, like rain pouring down, she'd think it might be a warning, like trouble with the crops or a tough day ahead. These beliefs made her dreams feel special, like a quiet conversation with the night. When Beatrice climbed into bed, the straw mattress would crunch under her, and she'd pull the wool blanket up to her chin. Thomas would be beside her, his breathing slow and steady, and Pip's snores would hum at her feet. Muffin's purrs would add a soft buzz like a lullaby. The bakery was dark, with only the faint glow of the embers, and the village outside was quiet, with gentle sounds like the wind rustling the straw roof or an owl hooting far away. As Beatrice closed her eyes, she'd feel her body relax, her tired arms and legs sinking into the bed. This cozy, peaceful moment was when her dreams would start, carrying her away to a world of pictures and feelings. Beatrice's dreams were often about her life in the bakery. She might dream of kneading dough, her hands strong and steady, the dough soft and warm under her fingers. In the dream, the dough would rise perfectly, growing big and puffy, ready to become golden loaves. She'd see the oven glowing bright, the bread baking inside, filling the air with a toasty smell. This kind of dream made Beatrice happy because it felt like a sign of good things, like a busy day at the bakery with lots of customers or a loaf that came out just right. She'd wake up with a little smile, thinking, maybe today will be a lucky day. Other dreams were different, like dreaming of rain. In her dream, she might see dark clouds over the village, raindrops falling on the fields, or water dripping through the straw roof. This wasn't a happy dream, it felt heavy, like something was wrong. Beatrice would think it might mean trouble, like a bad harvest that could make food scarce or a day when the oven wouldn't heat right. She wouldn't panic, though. She'd lie in bed, still half asleep, and think about the dream quietly. She'd wonder what it meant, but let it fade, trusting that the day would show her what she needed to know. This calm way of thinking helped her go back to sleep, her worries slipping away like the rain in her dream. Sometimes, Beatrice's dreams were about the village and the people she knew. She might dream of the kids who came to the bakery, their faces happy as they held warm bread. In the dream, they'd be laughing and running, their voices like music. This dream felt like a good sign, maybe meaning the village would be joyful or that her bread would bring smiles. Other times, she'd dream of Thomas, working beside her in the bakery, his hands covered in flour, his smile big and kind. This dream made her heart feel warm, like a reminder of their love and teamwork. She'd wake up, hear Thomas's real breathing beside her, and feel safe, letting sleep pull her back. Beatrice didn't always understand her dreams, but she liked thinking about them. When she woke up in the middle of the night, something people did a lot back then called segmented sleep, she'd lie still, the straw mattress soft under her, and ponder her dreams. She'd think about the pictures in her mind, like bread rising or rain falling, and wonder what they meant. Was the dream of bread a promise of good luck? Was the rain a warning to be careful? She didn't talk to Thomas about every dream, but sometimes she'd whisper, "I dreamed of bread rising, Thomas," and he'd mumble, "That's good, love," his voice sleepy. These quiet thoughts were like a gentle game, helping her mind stay calm as she drifted back to sleep. The bakery was the perfect place for dreaming. The dim light from the embers made the room feel like a cozy cave, safe and warm. The smells of bread and wood smoke were comforting, like a hug from her home. Pip's snores and Muffin's purrs were like a soft song, steady and soothing. The straw mattress, though lumpy, was cozy with Thomas's warmth and the heavy blanket. In this quiet space, Beatrice's dreams felt like special visitors coming to share their messages. She'd let them float through her mind, not holding on too tight, and let sleep deepen, carrying her away. Sometimes, Beatrice's dreams were funny. She might dream of Pip chasing a giant loaf of bread, his little legs running fast, his tail wagging like a flag. In the dream, the bread would roll away and Pip would bark, making Beatrice laugh. She'd wake up giggling, whispering, "Oh, Pip, you silly dog," and pet his warm fur at the foot of the bed. Other times, she'd dream of Muffin sitting on a huge pile of dough, her paws sinking in, looking proud like a queen. These dreams didn't seem like big messages, but they made Beatrice smile, filling her heart with joy as she fell back asleep. Beatrice believed dreams could be warnings, but she didn't let them scare her. If she dreamed of rain or a broken oven, she'd think about it calmly, maybe planning to check the fire or watch the sky. She trusted her dreams but didn't let them control her. Instead, she saw them as friends, giving her little hints about life. This way of thinking made her feel peaceful, like she was part of a bigger world that spoke to her through dreams. She'd lie in bed, the straw crunching if she moved, and let the dream fade, her yawns growing bigger as sleep came back. Some dreams were about things beyond the bakery. Beatrice might dream of a big field, green and sunny, with flowers everywhere. She'd walk through it, feeling the grass under her feet, the sun warm on her face. This dream felt like a gift, maybe meaning a happy time was coming or that she'd find peace. Other times, she'd dream of a river, its water sparkling as it flowed through the village. This could mean change, like new people coming to the village or a fresh start. Beatrice would think about these dreams quietly, letting their beauty stay with her as she drifted deeper into sleep. Beatrice's dreams weren't always clear. Sometimes they were blurry, like looking through foggy glass. She might see shapes or colors, golden bread, dark clouds, Thomas's smile, but not a full story. These dreams were harder to understand, but she still thought about them. She'd lie in bed, her eyes closed, and let the pieces float in her mind like leaves on a stream. She didn't need to know exactly what they meant. Just thinking about them was enough, like a soft puzzle that helped her relax. The bakery's quiet, with Pip's snores and Muffin's purrs, made these moments feel safe and calm. Sometimes Beatrice shared her dreams with Thomas in the morning. As they worked in the bakery mixing dough or tending the fire, she'd say, "I dreamed of bread rising last night," and Thomas would nod, saying, "That's a good sign, Beatrice." If she dreamed of rain, he might say, "We'll keep an eye on the roof today." Talking about dreams was a way to feel close, like sharing a secret. Thomas didn't always believe dreams meant something, but he listened because he loved Beatrice, and that made her feel happy. These little talks, with flour in the air and the oven warm, were part of their life together. Beatrice's dreams were special because they were hers, shaped by her life in the bakery and the village. She didn't dream of faraway places or fancy things. She dreamed of bread, rain, fields, and her family. These dreams felt real, like they were tied to her work and her home. When she woke up, she'd carry them with her like a soft glow in her heart. They didn't change her day, but they made it feel richer, like a story she was living. She'd knead dough or bake bread, thinking about her dream, and feel connected to something bigger, like the stars she saw through the shutter at night. The village had its own ideas about dreams, and Beatrice listened to them. The elders might say a dream of bread meant plenty, while a dream of losing something like a loaf falling could mean a small loss. Beatrice didn't follow every idea, but she liked hearing them. It was like collecting little pieces of wisdom, like pebbles from a stream. She'd think about her dreams in her own way, deciding what felt right. This quiet pondering was part of her night, a gentle way to ease into deeper sleep, like sinking into a warm, soft cloud. Sometimes Beatrice's dreams felt so real she'd wake up confused. She might dream of baking bread, the oven hot and the loaves perfect, only to open her eyes and see the dark bakery, the fire banked. She'd smile, realizing it was a dream, and lie still thinking about it. The straw mattress would crunch if she moved, and Thomas's breathing would steady her. She'd let the dream fade like smoke drifting away and feel her body relax. These vivid dreams were like a visit to another bakery, one in her mind, and they made her sleep feel full of wonder. Beatrice didn't write her dreams down. She couldn't write like most people in her village. Instead, she held them in her heart, thinking about them in the quiet of the night or the busy day. When she woke up in the middle of the night during her segmented sleep, she'd lie in bed, the bakery dark and cozy, and let her dreams come back to her. She'd see the bread, the rain, the fields, and feel their meaning like a soft whisper. The sounds of the night, Pip's snores, Muffin's purrs, the wind outside, helped her think, making her dreams feel like part of the world around her. Sometimes, funny dreams made Beatrice laugh. She might dream of Pip flying through the air, his little ears flapping like wings, chasing a loaf of bread. She'd wake up giggling, whispering, "Pip, you're a flying dog," and pet him softly. Other times, she'd dream of Thomas baking a loaf as big as the house, so big it wouldn't fit in the oven. She'd tell him in the morning, laughing, and he'd say, "I'd eat that loaf all day." These silly dreams were like a gift, bringing joy to her night and making her sleep feel light and happy. Beatrice's dreams were part of her sleep, like the straw mattress or the wool blanket. They made her nights special, giving her something to think about, like a puzzle or a story. She didn't need to understand every dream, just having them was enough. They were like messages from her heart, telling her about her hopes, her worries, and her life. She'd ponder them quietly, letting them fade as her sleep deepened, her body sinking into the bed, her mind drifting away. The bakery was the best place for these dreams. The dim light, the warm air, the smells of bread and smoke, they all made Beatrice feel safe, like her dreams could come and go without fear. Thomas's breathing, Pip's snores, Muffin's purrs, they were like a soft frame around her dreams, holding them close. The village outside, with its quiet sounds of wind and owls, was like a big, calm world that let her dream in peace. Beatrice would close her eyes, the straw crunching one last time, and let her dreams carry her, like a boat on a gentle river. Beatrice's belief in dreams teaches us something simple. Dreams can be special, like little stories that make you think and feel. You don't need to know exactly what they mean, just let them be like clouds floating by. Beatrice's dreams in her cozy bakery were part of her night, helping her rest and feel connected to her world. As you listen to her story, imagine her dreaming of bread rising or rain falling. Picture her straw bed, the dim glow of the embers, the soft sounds of her family. Let the gentleness of her dreams wrap around you like a lullaby, helping you feel sleepy and peaceful.